We are live. Welcome to the window to our mind, pod number 15, the decay of parenting. How are you, Marvel?
Doing fine. Not the best, but obviously not the worst.
Okay, well, that's a good start. That's good news. I like to hear that. What about you, D Lord? How are you?
Yeah, fine. Been busy. Been doing
That's
things.
that's another good thing. Like being buzzy is important.
Hmm.
What about you, Gray? How are you?
Oh, I'm just super fabulous. I don't know. Things are good, nothing that major, just completely swamped with work, but that's a good thing. And it's better than having zero work and, starving and dying. So, good times. What about you, Multi? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I cannot wait for next week. New job. That is very helpful. I cannot wait. So because of that, D Lord, in case you missed it, next week we will start 2 hour later both streams on Tuesdays and Wednesday. So basically, instead of 5:30, that would be 7:30. I don't know about great time zone, but yeah, right now it's 5:30 on my time zone. So calculate that plus 2 hour. Um, so yeah, um, I got a lot to say on that one, the decay of parenting. And it's funny because I see it more in society than in my own family. I like my own family is very traditional, I guess, in that aspect with parenting and stuff. But yeah, there's another thing I could share on parenting and stuff. Um, Remember these people telling you that we are overcrowded on Earth. There's too many people on Earth. Do you remember that kind of idea that we should stop making babies and stuff? I asked the panel right now. Is anyone heard of that? I don't know the exact word. That's why I'm digging into it.
Yeah,
Um,
I heard something like that.
Gray, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was definitely a huge craze in like the 70s is when they were kind of pushing it. They were saying that we were going to run out of food. It was going to be complete scarcity, and we've reached a point of overpopulation. And we're on the
Overpopulation.
decline.
That's what I heard about it. That's exactly
Yeah,
the word, overpopulation. So, do you know who
and
pushed that idea?
there were a bunch of thinkers. If you give me a second, I can look a little bit further into that. Off the top of my head, I can't remember any of them, but quite a few people kind of push that kind of doomer mentality that maybe we should just die. Let's not breed. It's kind of what led to like the one child policy and stuff in China. I mean, that's not the only thing that led to it, but it was that kind of
No,
mindset.
you are confusing the great step forward, by the way.
I understand. So I'm not confusing it, but it was very close to the same period because from the Great Step Forward, it wasn't automatically one child. Give me one moment to look that up. Tiamat, you seem pretty familiar with this. Have you heard of the whole overpopulation theory?
The original one.
Yeah, whatever
Well,
the
in
one you heard
reality,
of.
right? If you without there's a whole like minor tangent, or if you ever do into old sci-fi theory, because if you go back as far as like World War II and what Nazi scientists were supposedly testing, like they were testing with anti-gravitational forces, but they didn't know there was anti-gravity at the time or G forces, like with jets. So flash forward many years, a lot of people actually thought the world was going to end by the 1980s. Hence why like everything that was set in almost the 70s or late 70s or 80s or mid 80s was the end of the world, because
Yeah.
even original Star Trek, they thought the world was going to start ending in the 80s.
Well, there was a really popular book in 1968 called The Population Bomb, and it was put forward by Stanford University professor Paul Ehrlich. And yeah, it basically was an alarmist thing saying, like, in the subsequent decades, we're going to have overpopulation. Everything is going to suck. Everyone's going to die, and they're going to be miserable while they do it. Yeah, it didn't exactly happen. But yeah, it was kind of what led to that whole fear in the 70s of it. But they were not the only ones who pushed that.
No, it's futurism is a weird thing. Like they predict stuff, but it doesn't. It's not as accurate.
Well, this particular book, like just the cover of it, so it's population control or race to the oblivion, the population bomb. While you're reading these words, 4 people will have died from starvation, most of them children. That's the cover of this book, just so that you know.
Wow. So
So there were fears.
so the biggest reason why I bring this up, it's because we talk about parenting. And I did a few research on my own because I was curious. I was like, is it a myth? Is it reality? And it's a myth. And who pushed that theory? You're right, Dre. And other people did. More like these people selling these products to prevent pregnancy, like the pill and all that kind of stuff. So it's ironic that we still believe on that lie that was pushed by people that did benefit of a decrease in population, because they do benefit if they sell more of these pills to stop from being like pregnant and stuff. So yeah, that's a myth, and the biggest reason why it's a myth, it's because we actually waste a lot of food. Like it's crazy the amount of food we waste. So it's not overpopulation.
No,
It's
a
just
lot of
not.
it's actually logistics, and that's kind of the problem that we've seen with like countries that have also kind of gone through like some sort of extreme event, whether it's like national or natural events like natural disasters or some sort of like war or something. When we've gone to give them aid, just the distribution isn't there, and a lot of it goes to rot, which just sucks. Like even if you have it, getting it to the people that need it is always a problem. But that was kind of the alarmist tone, was that we're not going to be able to have enough food, and that was kind of the push for the whole genetically modified foods. And you know, we don't have that issue now. We kind of have the opposite issue.
Yeah.
But you can also, but I will say this: you can also have this weird trend because the idea of the one child policy in China was after the Great Leap Forward, which is its own special history. Because if anyone ever wants to know how communism really worked or what they think is communism, Great Leap Forward is definitely wiped out an entire generation. But he looked at the population and basically the world of China and said, now, just for sheer food reasons and state control, we're only going to have one kid. And it actually led to one of the highest female infant mortality rates which China had for decades because they could only have one kid.
Wow.
And because no one wanted their first only child to be a girl.
Yeah.
The same way too, you can look at certain stuff like by the 90s, right? Global warming along with other stuff thought the world was going to end by then. Because you can look at the Japanese. I've always cited them. They could legit become an extinct species within 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Because their fertility rate is approaching 1. Literally 1.
Yeah.
And they're not having kids. So much so they had to repeal the xenophobic policies. I hate to crush people's weeaboo dreams that they love white people. They love people.
They like tourists.
They love tourists, but they
They
are
ate.
very xenophobic. They are
Yeah,
extremely xenophobic. But a lot of the people aren't having kids. So over there, you're seeing a population carried by the old people. So while the average fertility rate, you started seeing this in Japan. They started having less kids. Like, just because they were working. Now, the other part that's interesting is you can get into the effects of the birth control pill kind of has had on roughly society. It may have altered the way kids are created in the way people choose their partners. That's a separate thing. I don't know if it goes into parenting, but there is some weird science.
Definitely changes everything for
it
sure.
goes into parenting.
Because I want you to notice, when you were growing up, have you noticed children are genetically weaker?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know if it's just children. You know,
Have you seen
we
it?
all seem weaker.
The effects, like kids are getting sicker.
yeah.
Yep.
More fragile. I think it's the food. I think it's a bunch of stuff because people don't really take care of themselves as much as they used to. There's a lot of factor. Like it's sociology, psychology. It's a bunch of stuff. Like if you tell a kid he has mental illness, he will believe it. That's the same for adult, by the way. But
See, autism, that's an interesting thing. Because in the 90s, because you had this weird mentality where a lot of them waited until their late 20s, mid to late 20s to have kids.
yeah,
So they said autism was a result of, initially, of people having kids later in life.
there
This was-
were paper and studies that proved it right at some extent.
So you started seeing it as people waiting to have kids. The autism rate went from like 1 in 150 kids to like the 1 in 10.
Yeah, and the other thing is that not many people think of. They don't really talk about it much. But the other thing is now we have more way to study that, and we have more way to diagnose right to say, oh, that kid is autistic or something, because we get more tests. We know more about that phenomenon that was there before, but it wasn't as well known as today. That's
And
the thing.
I should say autism should be moved to more of a developmental disorder, because that's really what it is.
Yeah,
But the concept of it is like because I don't know if you remember, Sarah Palin was on her 5th kid towards the end, and she was almost 40. They warned her that her last kid was going to have Down syndrome.
yeah,
Now, in reality, that's an obvious, like, issue that when, especially women have kids later, there's more issues.
men as well. It's not as bad because they don't carry the kid, but men as well. Men, it's above 40 or 42. That increases chance on having some disorder or illness.
Unless you get to weird, right? Because you ever notice you never see Barron Trump that much?
Yeah,
Nothing ever on him?
I mean, he's still a minor, isn't he? But
No,
I don't
he's
know.
probably been dope by now.
Is he?
Barron Trump is supposedly super spectral. And stories.
He's 17 right now.
Huh.
Apparently, he's 6'7" though, which is crazy.
See,
that's big.
you want to be honest. If you ever want to see interesting family genetics, look at Trump's family's genetics because they all have a form of insanity, legit. But it decays. Like they don't talk about Fred Trump, so like the rumor is that he is mid-autistic. Very much. And it's never been totally confirmed. But he was
So you're saying Barron Trump is kind of mid. All right.
So you're thinking about when decay of parenting, right? Because a lot of it's like, yeah, older men can have it, but like the idea is you don't see the effects as much as it is on the female population that chooses to have kids later.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of that weird idea. It goes into like the idea of population and how you could, because like in Matrix, right? Every time they wiped out Zion, they gave one ratio to one man to like 25 females.
Yeah.
To repopulate the planet. So they get
Yes.
to it.
Gray likes it.
I'm just saying, if you run the numbers, that seems to work out pretty good.
Well, there's also that idea as well, if you look into society as well, with the roles of men and women that broke down over this period. They're like, why don't we have women serve on the front line? Because the concept is men can die in war. Women are a valuable resource.
And they are ordered
Sure,
to...
just look at women as resources. Way to go, kid.
They are ordered to make pregnant and parent, you know?
Oh, by the way, that's why if you ever...
Hey, Base, join us. You got the link.
Well,
he is actually a parent. He probably has more insight than we
That's
do.
why I say
you know,
you got
good
the
times.
link. I know.
you know what,
that's why
though?
you got
He
the
is a
link.
sink. I mean, I would love to see his like take on this, but it is true because the idea of what happened is what is it? The idea of sinks. Okay, I think I brought this up before. Do you guys know what sinks are?
I don't.
No?
By the way, hey, Base, I gotta say, sorry, but I gotta say, okay, I'm not a parent yet, but I know many parents. And I got a half brother that sometime I consider my son, okay? Anyhow, you can move on, D-Lord.
So, sinks. Single income, no kids.
Yeah. I heard
There's
that a lot.
also... Do you know what a dink is?
2 income, but no kids.
Mm-hmm. Weirdly enough, you could probably blame TikTok for discovering some of this stuff.
Yeah,
But
I blame TikTok. You're right.
But TikTok apparently is going down in popularity in the new generation. There is hope. Yeah, so he's heard of dinks. Dinks are... So this is interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon that they're like, well, I want to be married but not have kids.
Because they think there's overpopulation.
Or they just never do. There's liberal people that aren't having kids. Like, I know of one in my age group. She never wanted kids, but she wouldn't get married.
Yeah.
What's wrong with getting married? Like, marriage isn't necessarily about kids. Like, it's about your commitment to another person, a partner in life, if you will. I don't know.
Not anymore, bro. I get the idea. I agree with the idea, but
It's just for taxes.
Yeah, and to have half of the other one stuff when it's done.
What? You have
Not
dinks?
all dinks.
You have dinks downstairs? Really? Are they that bad? You live in New York.
He's East Coast. Let's not completely dox him, but the population, it's a little closer there. It's no suburbs.
I don't dox him.
But
You can say he lives in New York. There's
It's
like
so
10
big.
boroughs.
There's like
There's a bunch
8
of
million.
boroughs in New York.
it's not technically New York is the thing. I didn't want to like dox him, but he's adjacent, if you will.
He's somewhere in the map. He exists. Anyhow, I will backpedal a bit on what you mentioned in Japan, and I've seen in a video. Sadly, I believe that was a video in French again because I've seen a few videos in French, but they were basically telling us that if we don't start like Europe, like Canada and USA, if we don't start like having kids like more often, uh, all of the people born will be from outside, so immigrant basically, and the white gene will basically vanish or become zero because like more people will die than being brought to life. And this is a bit sad.
But couldn't that put the sunblock industry out of business if there's no white anymore? Like, I don't know. That's just weird. Like, I don't know. So you're saying like an entire population would be completely gone? I don't know. I'd find that hard to believe. Like, in what time frame are they saying?
I believe it's like 30 years if we don't increase. Like the rate would be zero, so we would like be in danger of being erased, basically.
But I know white people that just had kids. Like, their babies aren't going to die within 30 years, so like they'll still be around. I don't know.
Yeah, I also know people with kids, but here's the thing.
You're talking about a fertility, the idea of what is the fertility rate.
Yeah, exactly. You got it right. You know what I'm talking about.
That's the concept is sometimes lower education countries you see it, but Europe, like the movie itself, like Children of Men, is a concept, right? It's not like everyone goes, oh, Handmaid's Tale kind of crap. No, Children of Men is literally like based on a future where the fertility rate utterly drops. Like there's a story I just happen to be going through it is Russia's population just dropped by 15 million.
Yeah, because
that's
they
a
got more,
lot.
They got more people dying than being brought on light to
and
life.
That is an issue in Japan. Japan is being led by the old people. So the concept of, like, you see it in manga and anime, that they're going to force marriages eventually.
Yeah.
With kids? That's an actual potential future. Just as the Ghost in the Shell future is potential as well. The concept is Europe's been going through this before. America's kind of the last to get hit. You've been seeing this where some just don't want to have kids, or they wait and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a salary person. It's literally the okay. Am I the only one here who has seen Idiocracy?
Maybe Gray.
No, it's a great film. Mike Judge.
The beginning of Idiocracy. Okay. So there is a beginning.
Yeah, I don't know that everyone is doing that though, and even the beginning of that would just say the stupid people are breeding. So
no, do you remember
it would just
the Idiocracy opening? I'm gonna find that.
Yeah, but the white trash people were also white, so like I don't know. I get what you're going at, that like, more educated people are having less kids. Yeah, that's true, but it would be saying the uneducated, stupid people would be having more kids.
There you go.
So I don't know.
I'm gonna put this in the private chat. Bring this up, Multi. This was done in 2006, he had no intentions of this becoming reality.
Okay. This looks interesting for sure. With the bar cancel pig. Okay.
Huh?
The link you marked down.
So I'm familiar with it though. Like it doesn't say anything about like populations declining. It's just smart people declining, so that we get a whole bunch of stupid people.
That's the funny part.
So I guess I don't understand the connection that you're making.
The
Like
funny
I'm
part
well
about
acquainted
it
with
is
it, and I understand what they're saying.
The more intelligent, right, part about people not having kids, he did not intend for Idiocracy to become a documentary.
Yeah.
That's why I said play it. You'll see it. This movie is he actually had a discussion with, I remember when he talked to Alex Jones years ago as well about this. He had no intentions of this one fact, the part about the intelligent couple not having kids. Like, it's a visual that, you know.
So that means every parents out there is stupid. Basically,
No,
that's
actually
what they mean.
Well, to be fair, there's two ways to read it. That's why I said it's a clip that's it's actually like worth watching, because it's like only a 4-minute clip. Won't get your channel struck.
That's why I won't share.
It still might, if it's got any sort of music on it.
Yeah.
It could. But so I'm well acquainted with it, and I understand it. It's basically saying like, okay, these educated people aren't just having a bunch of children willy-nilly, where the uneducated people are the stupid people are breeding, so therefore the population is now all stupid people. But it doesn't talk anything about a population coming down, where this was initially talking. You were saying something about like the white people would not be here in 30 years, and this is an example of it. I don't get how this is an example of that, though. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, help with that.
Yeah.
Because you're the one that has seen that. I get great point,
So-
and I'm actually curious why you made like these
so
dots.
if you look at that example, is they're both like career types. Yeah, but we don't want to have kids right now. We put it off having kids. Then eventually her husband dies of basically a heart attack. It's like, well, crap. So she's not going to have kids.
Fair point. I kind of see the point of you bringing this. But yeah, so the true sadness of that is mixing up people is amazing, and this is why we have stronger genetics than what we used to. But with that kind of trend, where we make less babies because we are more divided than ever, well, we stop making babies, and it's all of the immigrants. So basically, the white will be erased eventually, and less mix in genetics would be made.
Look.
So that's the sad part of it. But go on, D-Lord.
But this movie is more interesting and predictive. It also predicted President Donald Trump. And in 2024,
You view Trump as a Camacho type?
it predicted Donald Trump would run for president and win. It also predicted in 2024, Kanye West will run for president. Again,
There's
run
like
against
3 different
Oprah.
movies though that it heavily borrowed from, so you'd have to give them credit for like the concept and all that stuff.
But the idea,
I don't know.
right?
I get what you're saying. It's a
it's
fun concept, but I don't know that the IQ of the population has dropped. So I don't know that it's a documentary and it's come.
Are
through.
we sure? Are we?
I
Sure?
mean,
I think it did.
I mean,
Are we sure?
definitely in my area. I
Mine
really
as
wouldn't
well.
say in the rest of the world, but because I mean, let's be honest, we're all from different nations, and yet you guys are like a million times smarter than almost everyone in my area. So I think in my area definitely dropped.
I agree with you, DC.
Are you gonna do you want to bring up the idea, the concept is like the what is it? Because the concept, right, is the presidency became a celebrity competition. But there's a whole
So does that mean one of us is going to become future presidents of the United States? Or
that's why
Hell yeah.
that's why President Camacho was a wrestler and a porn star.
Great 2026. Is that
Now,
2026
the
next
favorite
time, guys,
part
have
is
election?
though it's actually funny how the it's a movie that has stood the test of, like, if we look at actually degrading in parents, right? Screen time is an interesting concept here as well. Screen time is the argument against it and for it is two different things. You're looking at an entire generation in the Zoomers, which are tech illiterate.
Yeah.
Beyond it, and I've mentioned this before, they have no concept of certain stuff. They are tech illiterate, even though they have some of the most advanced tech ever.
Yeah. Because
Their
they
social
made
skill.
everything easier, like, to do, so people don't really think anymore about how to do this or that.
Maybe. But the concept is, when you think a generic IQ drop, it occurred. Like COVID is a prime example.
Well, I don't know. When I'm looking up the global IQ, so in 1950 it was 91.64 was the mean IQ, and then in 2000 it was 89.2. So it looks like it's dropped like 1% or 1 point in about 75 years. I don't know, man. Like, it's not a huge
It's a gradual.
drop. And
it's
then
not a huge.
when I'm looking at other papers as well, they're saying, so granted, this was published in 2013, but it's saying that it's on a steady increase. So I don't know, because like the problem with the global one, when you look at the mean, like it does also include some of the more unfortunate countries that cannot study or cannot emphasize study. But
well, there's also
the
idea of, look at COVID. What happened during the kids during COVID when they weren't in the classroom?
Or they were doing their online class.
Yeah,
Online
it sucks.
class.
It
Lost, like, 2
actually
years of school.
impacted an entire generation of kids.
Yeah.
It literally, you say that, but I mean, except for me, I was probably the only person in the world that really wasn't that impacted by COVID. Which
base take, Patrick.
Which that is true. I think out of everybody in the world, I probably had almost the least amount of impact. Shows how bad my school years were before COVID, but yeah.
But like COVID, right? You saw it not in the screen time. Like, they don't have it as well. That arguably, to the point now, you actually have, which are like millennial teachers teaching kids, that kids are in the 7th grade. They shouldn't have passed the 4th grade. They're reading and doing math at the 4th grade level.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at a decay in parenting, it happens in society, start looking at home.
So then when was the optimum time? Like, when did kids have like so if this is a decay, when was the best in education for kids? Like, because I don't know. Previously, it used to be kids should be seen but not heard. So I don't know. Like, it wasn't like they really gave a damn about the kids. Like, you'd have like 12 because 10 of them aren't going to make it through the winter. I don't know, man. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, it does seem like, we did have a little bit more stricter focus on what would be included in like the curriculum, and it seems to have gotten away. But I don't know. Like, I remember having to write reports from an actual like, oh God, what the hell did they call them? I wanted to call it a thesaurus, an encyclopedia, where like you had to go over and find like the volume that the letter aligned to whatever your report is on, and you get like essentially a paragraph, and that's it. now they've literally got any sort of information at their fingertips. You know, like I remember when Wikipedia first came in and they kept saying like that's not reliable. They taught us how to actually like look through the links, the references that you get at the bottom of the Wikipedia page to find the initial source, look there, and then you could clip that if you want to. I don't know, man. Like some of it seems a lot more high tech than it used to be. And, you know, I think some of the people who, you know, were just using like chalkboard or chalk on a little tiny chalkboard, you know, maybe they wouldn't be able to write a report quite as eloquently as some of the kids today. I don't know. It seems like it's a trade-off.
Fair point. Fair point. So one last thing before we really dive deep into the fourth question, because there's so much to say about that. So the last thing is I heard out there, and I agree 100% with what was told. So basically, I will translate because again, that was from a French video, the same that was about like fertility rate and that kind of stuff. So basically, they said some people don't look forward to the future. They see it's all dark, all bleak. It's not a hopeful future, so they don't want to bring kids. And other people are kind of in the same kind of bubble where they don't want kids because their life, they don't like it, and they feel like their kids won't like it either. So it's basically people that are jaded by life sometimes. Again, there are genuine reason to not have kids, but like some people are jaded about life. I'm not saying it's not genuine, but like it's not the only reason. That's mainly what I'm saying. But a lot of people are jaded about what's going on in life, and because of that, they won't have kids. So society really healthy when your people in it, they just wait until they die and they don't want to like promote and create that heritage and like create a legacy with their kids. Is it really a healthy society what we are building if people feel like they are not hopeful, if people feel like, oh yeah, their lives sucks and they don't want to bring kids there? Is it a sign of like something wrong in society?
I mean, I'll bring this in. How many of us here were latchkey kids?
What's
I was.
latchkey?
My parents didn't give a damn. I was just, yeah. So latchkey, I can't remember exactly where it comes from, but it's essentially like both parents are working, so you come home to like an empty house.
Or
and
you would have
kinda
a
the run of
period,
it.
you come home and your parents aren't there.
Oh.
Only
Like
one
your-
of my parent was like that. The other one wasn't.
Like a kid would come home, you'd be given a key to kid in the house because maybe there's one parent goes to work in the morning and one doesn't come into home till the evening.
Yeah.
Based. Patrick knows. Apparently, it's because he used to wear the latch around the neck with a key. I did not quite understand that. I kept my key in my pocket like an American, but okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I had it around my neck, but yeah. So that's basically what I was trying to say. I don't know if I was clear enough on what I was trying to like
Yeah.
push.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So it's really me trying my best to translate what I heard and making it as clear as possible. So yeah, I guess now is the right time to dive deep into all four questions. And it's funny because we kind of already touched upon each question at some extent, but now we will dive deep into it. Question number one to Gray. What is good parenting and what is bad parenting? Gray.
That's a really good question. And I think it's changed throughout the ages. Like, I don't know if there's one specific way that is like the end all be all of parenting. You know, like each person is going to be completely different. So I don't know. If I were to give a universal, it would be, you know, be there for the kid and definitely adjust your own style to like the kid, like motivation, for instance. I've just known so many people that just shut down with criticism where they kind of need positive reinforcement. Uh, just from being like a supervisor or whatever, having people under me, like the way that you motivate them isn't all the same. You kind of have to adjust it to each person. You can go with a rigid set of rules, but there's going to be certain people that are kind of alienated by it. But I mean, when you look at like parenting through the ages, again, back in the day, it was kind of a known saying like children should be seen but not heard. Like you weren't supposed to actually, acknowledge the kid. Like they were basically, essentially kind of like a pet, I guess. They were there. They're going to be your progeny. But yeah, it has kind of evolved from there. And then it was, okay, the mother should be nurturing, but the father should be very standoffish. He's at work. Maybe you'll get a little bit of time. Maybe they'll play catch with you. That's really changed throughout the years. Now it does seem like, they do want what we are told is, both parents should be involved. Both parents should show that they're willing to talk and be open. But I don't know, man. I'm not a great parent. I don't have kids. So I don't know. I don't think it would be the same as equating it to my dogs. Like I can yell at my dogs and I don't feel bad. Like they're barking and shit. I don't know. I would hate it if I'm like scarring my kids for life by being like, shut the hell up. I don't know. That being said, yeah, I was a latchkey kid. So it's not like I got a lot of raising. Like my parents were hardly there. So they got divorced when I was like born, essentially. I was an unwanted child, unplanned. And yeah, it kind of went that way most of my life. So it's, I don't know. I'm not sure that I have the best example of parenting, but I don't know. I would have to think the opposite extreme, the helicopter parenting, isn't the greatest thing either. Okay. Jab is telling me good advice. Don't yell at my children. All right. Fair enough. I'll stop. But, I'm just saying, like, helicopter parenting, like, that has to be the opposite extreme, and it has to also have detrimental effects.
Yep.
I don't know if there is some healthy balance of, be involved, but don't be over-involved. Let your kid actually have some mistakes, some problems, get some scrapes, perhaps a broken bone. That's how they learn. I don't know. I think I had entirely too much freedom, and I was able to, wreak some real havoc. Maybe bring it back a little bit from where I'm at, or where I was at when I was a
Gray
kid.
has
But,
Gray had the group and the generation. Okay, this phrase is only pertinent to probably ours, or if you know the reference. Kids will be kids.
Yeah, I never had anyone say that, but it was a trope in like everything that I've ever seen. But
Where did that
surprisingly,
come
I got
from?
away with a
The
lot because I was a
Simpsons?
kid. I think it was before that. Like I want
modern
to say it
trope.
goes back to like, yeah. But
But
I think what a base is saying is correct. Like the idea is kind of the healthy in between. You don't want to helicopter parent and like not let your kid like experience anything, but hopefully you set them up in ways and prepare them to be able to go ahead and go through life without assistance. I don't know. Sadly, I think I was prepared to do that, but I don't know that the way that I was prepared was the best way. So I don't know. I guess that's my rambling thoughts on it.
I think based on your maturity, like I feel like you're able to self-reflect. So they maybe not messed up everything. Maybe they did a few things right. I don't know the detail about your life, but based on what I know, I think parts of it went well. I'm not saying that everything went well. It's really hard to make everything right, but
well, I watched some good TV shows, so they raised me well.
Then it's very sad to hear. I will say that. So DC, what is good parenting and what is bad parenting?
All right, so good parenting is essentially when you're raising your kids the right way and teaching them the lessons. Say they make one mistake and they'll learn from it. And how over time the next situation happens, they learn from it. You actually care for your children. You're not hurting them, and you're not like ignoring them. Like saying they're getting bullied, and they talk about it, and you obviously comfort and help them out through it. That's what I would call good parenting. Also, just the parents that would like risk their own lives and sacrifice themselves just to save you. That for me is good parenting. Um, um, but yeah. Now, as for what is bad parenting, it's pretty much the exact opposite. You don't care about your children. You could hardly, you can just traumatize your kid and not feel guilty about it. And you can pretty much say bad things and pretty much do all that nonsense, all that stuff. Kind of like what Gray was saying. And from when he was saying, I would put his parents at best neutral because they don't sound entirely bad, but they have a lot of really bad qualities. So it's essentially the parents that have the worst qualities is like the worst. That's why we call it bad parenting. And Gray, sorry if I offended you.
No, I think you're being too kind to my parents, but thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my, that comment.
Yeah.
I will adopt all of you. D-Lord, what's your response to that?
What's the question? I was
What is good parenting and what is bad parenting?
I say good. I was gonna say the the good idea of parenting is having responsibility and responsibly teaching their kids and doing the same way. I think like combination of latchkey providing for your kids as well as also just like but you're providing for the kids but as well as letting them learn.
Well said.
So
Do you want to add more?
no, I'm good.
Okay, so I will have a more clinical approach to it because, again, I will remind people I did study special care counseling for 2 years, and I have my own experience through my family, my parents, my cousin, my aunt, all of these people. So even if I don't have kids yet, I still kind of know a rough idea on how it should be. Um, there's three types of parenting types or frame, if it's the right word. Frame, is it the right word? Or there's a better word for it? I'm asking Dre or the Lord. Is there a better word? Um,
I think
Is it
frame works.
wait,
Frameworks.
is it
Okay.
F is it FRAME or FRANE?
Frame like I have a frame here with my face in it.
Oh. I think that works.
Okay, so there are three types of frame. And again, I will try my best to translate because, again, I had my course in French. So there's the authoritarian one, which is the overly strict frame, where the kid makes a mistake, you don't bother explaining, you scream, you yell, you hit the kid. That's a way to scar a child. Or another example of like that authoritarian frame is that kid, it's the first time he does something wrong, and you decide to punish that kid for like a straight up month where the only thing he can do or she can do is like reading books or like wandering around in their room doing nothing. um, and this is really bad because then the kid will have that kind of pressure where, oh, if I do one mistake, my life is basically over, if you know what I mean. So that adds like insecurities, and that may sound, oh, that's great, like I want my kid to be scared to break the law and that kind of stuff, but no, not really. Like that will create insecurities again. That person will always fear that they did something wrong, even when they didn't. And I can bet and tell that you know at least one person, or in the past you have known one person like that, that even if they do everything right, they will feel like crap, or they will feel like, oh yeah, I did something wrong, even if they didn't. So that's the kind of break you make if you're the authoritarian type, where you always scream it and never really explain, and you're overly strict, and it's always big punishment instead of explanation and care. Now, the second type is let them do whatever they want. There's another word in French, but I don't know the exact word in English. That's why I say they let them do whatever they want.
Monster.
Uh,
No, I think he meant like neutral. Great,
no,
neutral.
no. Neutral is another one. So basically, let them do whatever they want is no parents home. You do like all of the mischief you can, and there's no backlash. There's no parents around, or parents are too occupied to take care of the kids. The other type is, oh yeah, I will plug you on the TV or the computer the entire time you're home, and I won't like raise you or anything. And again, I can bet you know many people like that, because it's not everyone that knows how to parent well. And this is really bad, because then what you create is a kid that doesn't know frames, doesn't know limit, doesn't know rules. So they think they can do whatever they want, and they think that everyone owes them everything. So basically, you get a spoiled brat, just like what Abe said. So like that's the best way. Like if you do that, your kid will struggle at work. Your kid will struggle at school, because your kid won't take their bus seriously. They won't take their teacher seriously. They will be like, "Oh yeah, it's a trip. It's a field trip or something." It's wrong, because there are set of rules in society. Even as an adult, you have rules to follow. You have a boss to follow, and even for example, you're your own boss. You still need to follow the law. You still need to follow some guidelines. Otherwise, you will mess up. So yeah, that's as bad as the authoritarian one. Now, the third type, which is the one that is highly recommended, is the democratic one, the neutral one, the one in between. So, the one in between is quite interesting, because it's the best. And it's a mix of both. When you do a intervention with your kid, you explain why. You make sure it's understood, and you also give freedom for mistakes. But again, if you see a pattern, you break it. And sometimes you become a bit more authoritarian when it comes to like, oh, there's a pattern, I need to break it, so I will take away your Xbox, I will take away your TV for X amount of time. But that's like after many warning, after many explanation of saying you cannot do that. And again, you need to understand your kid. And with that democratic approach, it's like that neutral approach. You will try to understand um, why your kid is doing that. And it will be like, okay, my kid is doing this, so I will do that to comfort him or her without necessarily letting him or her rule the house or control the frame, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I was clear enough on that one.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're clear. You're clear.
well, that's good. So yeah, the neutral one is really a mixture of both. You can let stuff slide. as long as you explain to them and sometimes try to find common ground. Like they ask for, I don't know, an hour extra of TV after they did something good. You
You're
tell
good.
them you will get half an hour, not necessarily an hour,
You
and that
need
kind of
to
stuff.
teach the kids, like, let them learn, but you need to let them develop judgment properly.
Yeah, exactly. That's well explained, the Lord. I like your take. And this is fitting the neutral world where you are around, but you let them experience stuff. And if they do mistakes, you explain to them what's wrong and what should be done. If it's not done, then another warning. If it's still not done, then punishment and that kind of stuff. But again, you don't need to scream or hit the kids. A firm
Just the threat
talk,
is enough.
yeah. Um, but again, it's case by case. So the good parenting is the neutral one. If you're authoritarian, that's bad. If you let them do whatever they want, it's also bad. So you really need a good balance, and that's the clinical approach where it's communication and in house with two parents household, make sure that both parents are on the same page because if after dad said no they go to mom and mom says yes, then there's something wrong with the parenting dynamic because then the kid will figure out, oh, mom will say yes, so I will always go to her instead of dad. So both parents to maximize it, they must be on the same page. And yeah, um, so that's good parenting when both parents are on the same page, when they are democratic or neutral. Like sometimes they will do stuff, others they don't. And I don't have much more to say on that question. I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more to what we said already.
No.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot to.
Yep.
Okay,
I think we can
so
kind of move on to two.
yeah, question number two. What would be the factor that could lead to a decay of parenting? And I will ask D Lord, and if D Lord response is brief, DC, you're next, and I
All
will
right.
be right back. So D Lord and then DC.
What's the question?
What?
What?
That's number two. Yeah,
Yeah.
I will let you.
Yeah. What could be the factors that could lead to a decay of parenting? Number two.
What type of parenting?
What factors lead to the decay? So it could be
Oh.
the type of parent.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes I try words to break up. I think what factors would be is you just lose sight of what you're supposed to do. You need to, as I said, part of parenting is you need to let them grow naturally, but at the same way, you need to teach them responsible judgment. Because, like, you see it a lot in, like, the TikTok generation or the people who grew up on that. They mimic what they see. Because sometimes children are actually sponges. So, like, if you just stick them on TikTok and such, that's why, like, there's a difference. I swear, there's a difference between my generation and the generation early millennials that came on after me. I was taught on Generation 1 Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, those type of stuff. They were brought up on, like, Barney and Teletubbies and et cetera, et cetera. You saw maybe a decay because they go, well, it's supposed to be educational, but you don't think there's any effects. It starts with usually parents don't teach the morality to their kids as well. So that's the way I view it. It's usually a breakdown occurs when either one works too much or they fail to teach the kid. So then you become that situation. Like, I'm sure Gray's very familiar with it. Like
Yeah, my parents
the
didn't give a damn, and they were never there.
the Duggars, basically the kids raise themselves. Oh, you're not familiar with that?
No, I am.
No.
It's just a sad situation. I don't
They
quite
have
know where to go there,
so
but
many kids.
bad
They
times.
can't raise the kids. Literally, the older kids are raising the kids. So,
Do you have more to add, or you're
now, Patrick, check your DMs on Discord.
all right?
Story.
What about you, DC? How would you? What do you think the factors are?
I actually think that there's a lot of factors. Obviously, drugs, alcohol, smoking; those are obvious factors. But I will also say, let's see, like not caring about your like spouse. Like, I know this is more for like the mom and dad part, like husband, wife, and that stuff. But let's just say you're a husband, and you know you don't do all those bad things like drugs or drink, but you don't care about your wife. That would kind of shows you how that's another factor, because you don't if you're a husband who doesn't care about your wife, then of course you're not going to have a good outlook on your kid. um Crime is a perfect example. Obviously there are some parents who would definitely be desperate for money to keep their child safe, but I think for most part some parents would rather fall into poverty than commit crimes, because crime is just too much. And yeah, other factors can also lead is having your son become like a school bully. That's another aspect, and it would definitely decay your goal as a parent, as now you're gonna see your child's now hurting others, and you can't do anything about it. Your child becomes a predator. And I use that term predator because I am actually not like, like hunter and all that. Talk about a different kind of predator. Or like your kid becomes a stalker. It's like you can't control that. Other aspects that can also lead to decaying of parenting is animals. A lot of parents have pets. Well, if you and you're obviously if you have a pet, you have to take a lot of responsibility to your kids and the pet. But if you do it to like one more so than the other, then obviously you leads to some decay. Animal cruelty is another example. But I think the biggest one for me is like let's just say weapons. Perfect example. You can bring a weapon for protection and safety, and it's just for those reasons, and that's fine. But any other reason that's not for protection and safety, that pretty much should just decay you as a parent entirely, because it would just show now you're just a selfish person at best. But yeah, those are my factors that leads to the decaying of parenting.
Okay. What about you, Gray? What would be the reason for the decay of parenting?
A lot of those factors for sure. I think another big thing is just like the interest in parenting. Like if you ever wanted to be a parent, sadly, a lot of people don't think ahead, and it is kind of just the end result of something. That definitely factors into one, kind of your motivation, I would say. Or at least it could. I don't know. My parents just didn't want to be parents. I think that's kind of their main failing. So I don't know. Like you would have to actually have a desire to be involved and to actually want to, raise a quality human, But yeah, sadly, a lot of parents don't kind of think ahead on that, and they don't really have that fleeting interest. You know, like how many times have you heard like maybe a baby will save this relationship or something? That's not, you know, like bringing a child into the best environment, so to speak. Um, so I don't know. You know, not being a parent, I realized, you know, I have a very cursed bloodline and it should die with me. So I don't know. I made that choice. I'm kind of hoping that, you know, a lot of other people would make that choice if they realize, you know, they're not in the best place to, you know, be a parent at this time or in their life. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm the best one to answer this, but yeah, I think desire to actually be a parent is, you know, a huge factor.
Yeah.
You can tell when somebody doesn't really want to be there, but they're kind of forced to be. I don't know. I can't think that would be a good parent.
Yeah. Also, Gary, I can
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Gary, I relate a lot because I also don't want to be a parent because I know, and it's not for like any. It's because I mean, not only do I not think I'm responsible enough, but I mean, I don't want my kid to be getting bullied. I don't want my kid to end up like a bully from my experience. And I definitely do not want my kid to be doing drugs. So it's like, and you just gotta find a perfect balance. And that balance seems extremely rare. Like I see it on like social media half the time, and half the time on YouTube, it's like it seems very rare that they have that perfectly balanced kid as well. But yeah, or like yeah, so that's another reason why. Plus I've been through so much to a point. It's like I don't even want to have a kid. Like throughout my life, been through so much to a point. It's like all that darkness goes into a kid's like, nah, I'm not doing that. But yeah.
Very interesting. So when it comes to me, what could be factors that could lead to the decay of parenting? The explosion of the family unit. As a divorced parent, you may not understand that very well, so ask your kid how it affected them. But I can bet that in many cases, even if that was the right thing to do, you messed up your kids. It's sad to say, but if
I
you
don't know if that's
cannot,
fair, man. Like two people constantly fighting, like forced to be together for 18 years because of an obligation to you. You're telling me that that wouldn't like screw you up? I don't know, man. Like it
I
seems like it is a
mean,
trade-off either way. Like
I
it's
mean,
probably going to
great.
affect the kid, but wouldn't anything affect the kid?
um, it's a very interesting one. Now, the best counter argument I may have is like, don't make kids with people you don't know. Um, I know then there's the excuse, oh, but he changed because we have kids now. Did he really change, or you just decided to look that person for the way they are? Um,
Yeah.
that's the other question. And I will say that yes, there are valid reasons to separate and stuff, but again, be cautious on who you're having kids with, and it's also not fair for kids because then they will envy um, these families that are still united, even if they are more rare and rare. They will envy it even more if they get to see it. And the other thing is, um, then as a kid you witness that and you're like, will I be like my parents and I won't be able to get along with someone else? Do you have that kind of scar where, oh, my parent didn't get along so I cannot get along with anybody? But again, it's not every divorced kids. You're a divorced kid, so you have a different mindset for sure, but there are cases where, oh, I see that as an example, and even if I don't want it, I'm afraid I will turn like that. And maybe parts of the reason that you don't want kids is you have that underneath reason that you don't realize. Your subconscious may know, but your conscious may not know, if you know what I mean, Dre. So you have seen your parents splitting. So I'm not saying that's the case, but maybe
I don't know,
because you
man. Like
witnessed that,
they
that messed
split
you up.
before I was born, so I've never known like what it was like together. I've just seen them fight, so it's like I imagine it would have been more of that, but I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, so I do think that since the family unit was destroyed, there were like seeds of a decay because parents, they don't think it's
Well,
important to get along anymore. They'd rather give up on the relationship and move on to
but
something
what
else.
is the family unit? Like, is it so each of them have gotten married subsequently? I think my dad's been married for like 20 years, and I think my mom has been married for like 15 years. I don't know. They both have stable relationships and everything. Like, they have given examples of that. I don't know that like you get one shot at like showing them what a stable family is, and if not, you've screwed them up forever. But maybe I'm wrong.
You make very interesting point and fair point. Maybe they learned from what happened with you. Maybe that's the thing. Who knows?
From
Only
what
you
happened
can.
with me, I was the cause of their divorce. I got you.
That's your fault, Dre. You were not born, but that's your fault.
Wow, it was great. So evil that his parents split when he was born because of him. Wow. Um,
Um, but yeah, another factor is a trend I have seen on Facebook, TikTok, many places. These strong women that need no man to raise a kid, so they go to a bank of seeds and they get egg planted, and boom, they are pregnant, and there's a donor, but there's no father, and they're proud because they ain't men. Because this is what feminists has teach these girls, even if at first feminism was right, it just turned ugly over the years. And it sounds harsh, right? But that's the reality, that in some families where there's no father around, the criminality rate goes higher and higher. A lot of criminals are criminals because their daddies were not around.
yeah, or their fathers were terrible, or they were picked on, or they had traumatic events happen to them.
That
Some
There's
of us
doesn't
other
were just
factors
bored.
as well.
that doesn't
Yeah,
excuses the fact that they did a
yeah,
crime, but this is a
yeah,
foundation, this is a reason, this is like you go at war and you both have guns, you shoot each other, so of course you're both responsible because you're on that war, both of you, but you're still the reason why the other one got hurt. It's the same
yep.
idea there. um so yeah, I'm not saying that no single mother can do a good job. I'm just saying that you have higher chance into messing up hard than if there's another parent. And I also do think two parents household are much more effective if done right than one parent household. And
I don't know. Isn't
again,
that if done right, like carrying a lot of that weight? Couldn't like a one parent household, if done right, like be better than a shitty two parent household? I don't know. I think there's just like a lot of weight that's been. You're right. Like it would be a good thing for each kid. Like if they did get a good example of each sex and a good role model and kind of a good model of what a relationship should be and how a family dynamic should be. But damn, dude, you're not in control of that. Like you're just kind of, you get the cards you're dealt.
yeah, and I will also say that I experienced both things you just mentioned. Um, and I can tell that both sucked. um, both sucked. There's no better world. And yeah, maybe that's just my case, but yeah, I experienced both. Anyhow, I'd say again, don't make kids with people you don't know. Like, be responsible there.
But what if they're a celebrity?
Doesn't matter.
Oh
Doesn't matter. They're
wow!
still a stranger. Gray.
Wow! Wow! But again, I do think it's important to have a good role model of a man and a woman. So um, I specify that because I've also seen that trend of gay people having to adopt and sometimes artificially make kids or like using a lab shenanigans to have kids. And I do think they can succeed as long as they're conscious.
Science being called shenanigans. I'm not sure if this is a French thing, but we call it science here, not lab
Science.
shenanigans. But okay.
Science. Uh, anyhow, science. Okay, so I do think they can do great job, gay parents, as long as they're aware that they still need the other gender to be represented. So, for example, you have a sister or a brother um, that is around to showcase the kid. Look, that's a role model you can strive for. That's the kind of people you can be like in the future. um, or like even a good friend that you know is a positive influence can also help a lot. And it's sad to say, but you cannot really do that just you two. Even if you're great parents on your own, the kid will still seek for that role model. And if you're not the one giving the right role model, then they will find their own. And if they find their own role model, maybe it's not a great role model. That's the other thing. So that also goes back to like these proud single mother because they ate men. This is also a message for you that these kids they won't know what should be a good man because you think you need no man. Just saying. Um, so I think I talked enough on that point. I'm wondering if I was clear on that last aspect or not.
Yep. Yep. You're
No,
clear.
you're clear, man. I do have one kind of question for you though. You were saying like it's always better to have, like two parents in there. I know I dated this girl for quite a while, but like her parents like absolutely hated each other and it was just like horrible to be around them. But they stayed together for the kids. And the only reason they didn't divorce is like her younger sister was not 18 yet. So I'm pretty sure that's done and gone now. But yeah, I don't know. Like, would that be better than like two happy people possibly on their own, possibly finding an actual like connection with somebody else? I don't know. Like, it just kind of seemed like from the scenario you put forward, you would say that would be preferable.
I will be honest. Yes, I do think like except like their
Hmm.
exception. Like if one of the two beats up the other, then it's clearly not a good idea. But like if they only
So there was
argue and
definitely nothing
stuff,
physical, but all of their kids were as screwed up as me, if not more, but in a different way. I don't know. It's just
it
interesting.
it, it doesn't help. Again, as long as it's not a fist fight at home, like I I'd say like as a person you need to be like able to get along with others, and if you show that kind of example to the kids will struggle later on for sure, but they will still have that family unit. Even if it's not the best family unit, it will still be
Would that set them up to look for like the correct type of partner, or are they looking for somebody that they can resent for the rest of their life?
we can flip it in both ways. Now that they see that kind of stuff, maybe they will learn from it and they will be like, oh, I will seek for something else than that. You can flip the scenario there. But I get your point, and that's clearly a downside. But the upside is now you know, oh, you need to be cautious. Like, don't make kids with anybody because then it will be bad for the kids. I think it can always improve a lot your empathy. That's one thing I'm sure can increase a lot your empathy because it will be like, oh yeah, I don't want this because I don't like it and I don't want that for my kid. So I will try to not do that for my kid. So like there's still like benefits, but yeah, I got another similar situation where one of my friends, his parents were together, even if it wasn't going all right. They were together for the family, and he turned out very well. And he is on a very healthy relationship. And the same goes for like his brother and sister. So again,
Oh yeah, glad it worked out for them.
it like there are some cases it like the best case scenario is like get along with the other. I think that's the best you can do and be. It's not always easy, but that's a relationship for you. There are challenges, and I feel like society has teach us and taught us. Look, if it's too hard, just give up and play another game. I just think that's a trend. People stopped caring as much, and people just move on easier, I guess. They don't value as much the bonds they have with each other. Maybe I'm too dark or bleak. I don't know. Um, so I'm wondering if
You're
any
not.
of
In
you would.
fact, I can actually go on.
Oh, go on, go on.
I was just gonna say I can relate to that. What you just said, like like you become to a point where you don't care. I can relate to that very well.
Yeah. Um. So I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more before we move on to question number 3.
Nah, that's it. Bring on
Not me.
3.
Number 3. Gray will go first. What are the 3 biggest types of parenting format frame? I actually already answered it into, and I didn't realize. But do you
Yeah.
want to add more to on that?
I'd say if you want the scientific answer to that question, go with Multi's answer. But I would say good, neutral, and bad would be the 3 types. Try to be good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot to add to that. I think your answer was way beyond what my capabilities are at this point.
I will also ask it to DC. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, normally when I think of the 3 biggest types of parenting, I mean, there's obviously abusive, and neglectful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You can add
those are
more
the
if you
two,
want.
yeah, those are the 2 that comes to mind. Um, Third, mm, I really can't think of any, and I can't really think of any of when it comes to like the good ones. The reason why I think those 2 come up to my mind is because those 2 terms are the ones that describe parents the most, especially the ones who are the most evil.
Okay. Do you want to add more?
Eh, I'll let D Lord go on.
D Lord, you got the signal now, the smoke screen. Are you there, D Lord?
Yeah.
The dragon may not see the smoke screen. Oh, he does. My bad.
What what are the 3 biggest types of parenting format frame?
What's the question?
What are the 3 biggest types of parenting? I
Uh,
already kind of answered it, but if you want to add your spin on it.
well, I put the 3 biggest types is you have the ones who don't parent enough, that they just have the kids. You have the helicopter parents, and then you have the ones that just basically no, it's actually just sometimes a language barrier. Because sometimes French to English does not make sense. It's like my German friend. I have to. He doesn't speak fluent or clear at all. So you have the ones who don't care, the ones that care too much, and the ones who know how to balance it.
Yeah, I yeah, that's a good summarization of what I've said. That's amazing. Last question. Be aware if you wake him. So yeah, last question. Is there a decade of parenting, guys? Who wants to go first?
I'll go
Sure.
first.
Mine's probably the simple. Oh, please, DC, you go, sir.
All right. All right. So is there a decay? My answer is straight down the middle. There really isn't like a decay. No, nor is there like an uprising. It's just strictly down the middle. Simply because like I one time said, there are good people and bad people. So no matter what, you can never balance out good and evil, and this it happens with everybody, including parents. There could be good parents, there can be crappy parents, there could be loving parents, there can be violent parents, there could be parents who would save your life and other people's lives. There are people who are downright criminals. You see, there's no real balance, and that's why there really isn't a decay. For me, a decay is like there's more bad parents than good parents, like more shown that bad parents are rising, but there's never that case. That's why it's always like there are bad parents and good parents, and it's kind of like a balance, like 50-50. It's like a flip of a coin, pretty much. One side is good, one side is bad. There's really no like uprising, there's no decay, in my opinion. So it's strictly down the middle.
Okay, that I really like your answer. I will add more because now I just remembered something I wanted to bring up earlier in the stream, but kind of forgot. Um, Another trend that is harmful for kids: the screen time. Way too much screen time is bad, and psychology proved it with research. If you spend, I believe, more, I can't remember the exact time, but either it's 40 more than 45 minutes or more than 1 hour and a half. I'm not quite sure of which one of the two is the right one. But if as a kid you spend more than this, it's bad. And like per day, like 45 minutes to 1 hour and a half per day is too much. And the biggest reason is your brain is still developing and growing. So it's recommended until you're like, I believe it's like 21 ish. You should do less than an hour and a half of screen time uh, per day. Because what it does is the eye activity uh, does agitate your front lobe. So this means the control of emotions. And if you tweak it too much, your control of emotions will be harder for someone that has reduced screen time. And now some of you may wonder, oh, but what kid can do to escape being bored and stuff? Let them do their homework. Uh, Bring them outside. Even if there's snow, they can like trade a fort or something. Make them read books, actual books. Play board games with them. There's just way too many things you can do in 2024 to pretend that there's only a screen you can give to the kids.
Or become president of the United States.
But yeah, so you need to be aware of that kind of stuff. And giving a movie or giving screen time to a kid is really easy because you just plug the cable and you're like, oh, do your things.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the concerns and everything, but like, I don't know. When we brought up last week, I wish I had actually brought up the cartoon. I can't find it now for the life of me, which really sucks. But it was like through the ages, and it was talking about like the 1800s, like, oh my God, the printed word, like this is going to be the fall of society. Everyone just has their heads in books. And then it went to like magazines. Oh my God, everybody has their head in a magazine. This is the end of society. Then did the same thing with radio and then with television. I don't know. Like I think it depends what you're doing, like what you're reading. Like if you're just reading trash, yeah, like then your head is just full of trash. But there's so much that you can be doing on the screens. Like you mentioned, like over an hour of screen time. Well, we've been doing this. So are we contributing to like the dumbing of minors or the corruption of their frontal lobes, so to speak, or whatever?
It's sad to say, but yes.
Yeah, so I don't know, but maybe, but like, okay, so everyone who works an office job and is in front of a screen for 40 hours a week, like they're all destroying their frontal lobes. Like it kind of depends what you're doing behind it. I would think like you're activating different parts of your lobe when you're sitting in front of a computer creating music or something, or doing something
You
artistic.
brought adults
I
in
think
the
it's all a
office.
trade-off, man.
It's different. You brought adults. It's
But
very different because that front lobes is usually like mature around 21 years old, 25 years old. So like, except if you have a major accident that, for example, in psychology there was that guy that had a pole going through his head.
yeah, Phineas Gage.
Yeah,
His entire personality changed.
yeah.
No,
So
I completely agree with you on that part, but it's just I think it depends what you're using the screen for. Like if you're just using it as a way to give you entertainment and a thing for you, yeah. But if you're using it as something that like challenges yourself, if you're using it for something creative, I don't know that it has that same detrimental effect. I think
it's
there is more factors that go into that.
it's the light, basically the light from the screen that is harmful, and the more color there is, the worse it is. But again, it's until they are 21, because that's basically usually when they grow their frontal lobe. um, but
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'd have to think that it affects you differently depending on like how you're actually using it. Like if you're using low light mode, if you're using like protective eyewear or something like that. Like I don't know that it's just like a blanket. Like you don't have a screen in front of the kids until they're 21 or whatever. I don't know. Like I was basically sat in front of a screen. It did so much less than what I can do now. I can be so much more creative, and I can actually do things that are somewhat productive on my screen now. Where like I was literally just sat in front of a TV. Like that's how a good generation of us were raised, and it just sucks. I
yeah,
don't disagree with you that is not a huge factor in poor parenting. That's not a good babysitter, so to speak.
yeah. Again, you make really valid and fair points that I like. But that's the science that proved it, that, oh yeah, too much time spent. I believe it's 1 hour and a half, but I've heard 45 minutes, so I'm not sure if it's 45 or 1 hour and a half. Anyhow, there are other stuff your kids
Either
can.
way, we've beat that mark, so we are contributing to the delinquency.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Like we make your kids dangerous now. um. So yeah, I wanted to share that, and following that trend, I do think there's a decay of parenting by many factors, and one of the biggest factors is the lack of fathers. And now you'll tell me, oh, but that was a thing in the past. Yes, but in the past it wasn't really by choice, and even if the father wasn't perfect or emotionally available, they were still in the family unit, so the father was still around. So they were still like example of what you could see for or what you could become. But now they want to kick out the father from the house with all of these anti-men mothers that are proud to be single and that hate men. Now again, I'm not saying that about every single mother. it's not what I mean. It's really that specific demographic that I refer to, that demographic that's like need no man, I ate men, or that kind of stuff, or I I can do this alone, and that kind of philosophy. Like, yeah, it's part of the what I consider the decay. And again, more screen time, and even with like my half brother, well, it's more like my half sister, because my half brother, it's a bit different. He has a different situation at the moment, but my half sister spends much more time in front of a screen than me at the same age, and we were raised by the same mother, basically. And I can tell that now her attention span is worse than what I used to have. I still didn't have the best attention span, but like I had better attention span nonetheless, and even my mother's tell me the same. I had a better attention span. So that goes back to like screen affecting the brain. Um, and it's also crazy that my first cell phone I had, I was like 16, and I look at my cousin, she turned like around like between 10 and 12 years old, and she already has her first cell phone. I'm like, okay, um, great. I guess that's fine. Um, but yeah, it's like more screens because it's easier, less complicated, less trouble, and we 8 men. So yeah, I do believe there's a decay. D Lord, what about you? Is there a decay of parenting?
Probably, but I have to offer a little bit of pushback. You have this weird narrative that all single parent households, if they are female led, lead the daughters hating men. I think that's a very
Same
maybe
goes for men. It's just
thir-
less often men.
30% maybe. Because the difference when you have a single parent household, which you could say the products of divorce sometimes, which a lot of some people are, it does have a effect, but not like you think. You don't think if you come from a broken home, you learn parenting from those you see around you. So if you come from a divorced home or two different parents, you don't see it. Now, I think a lot of the factors you're talking about come from a societal thing that comes afterwards. Let's say the parents don't parent and the kids are just learning stuff from the wild. Like they're learning it from their teachers, not as much TikTok or that type stuff. The anti man mentality is because partly I think comes from if you have a son or a boy not raised properly, what a male parental figure looks like. They're not going to know because they never had the role models in their life. The same goes for daughters when they're like they don't know what a real mother looks like. You
Yeah,
should not pass your own insecurities off to the next generation. Kind of the concept of it's this weird concept of generational sin.
yeah,
Uh, what is it? Notably, like I know it comes from like the '93 movie, but the idea of Bruce Lee was afraid his sins would pass on to his children,
yeah,
which you could arguably say, well, that's the idea, the AKA the samurai of death kind of thing. You know the reference.
Yeah.
But it's all how you handle it. I have seen people who come from divorced households become great parents of kids as well. Sometimes they don't make the same mistakes as their prior. Sometimes they make it. And it also depends on a cultural pattern, too. Because I was raised, because usually if the parents don't raise you, the village would raise you, or your grandparents would raise you.
Yeah.
So I think there is a decay, but as much as a decay in parents, as much as a decay in the village raising the child.
That's true. I agree with that.
So that's what to say on that.
And you mentioned like uh, me only mentioning women's. Men also like single fathers. They cannot make up for that mother that's not around. But I think it's less often because I've never heard or seen a single man saying, "I need no woman. I can do this alone." While on the other end, I have seen bunch of stuff like "need no man" or
Wasn't it the opposite? Like they're just super sexist against women, and women are lesser than men, and it's okay if men have multiple women in their life, but women are just kind of an object. It's not exactly the same thing, but it would be also a horrible mentality against the other sex.
Yeah,
I
this
don't
I
know that
agree
it's
with what you
the
said. Yeah.
same, but I think you could have the same type of horrible traumatic effect on a kid by teaching them the wrong thing about the opposite sex.
This I agree. That's why again I also think having only a single father is as bad as a single mother. They are both equally as bad because there's still a missing ingredient, which is like the other side of a $2 or something. Um,
Well, it's
so
usually then the father goes missing because of his kind of sexist views, and then he impasses that onto his kid as well. I don't know. Like it just seems like it's a different cycle for you know kind of bad fathers. It's generally not. I am everything that you need. You're right. Like it's not that mentality, but I don't know. That's like a huge prevalent mentality that's like sweeping the nation. I think a lot of people are using that as a sort of cope. Like they're in a certain situation, so they're trying to make the best of it or put on a brave face, so to speak.
not really, because I do think a lot of women that go out there and say need no man, they
When you
truly
say a
believe
lot,
that.
how many would that be? Like if you were to say like the percentage of children raised in single parent homes, how many are by choice of the mother? I don't think that's as prevalent as
To,
you're making it seem.
to be honest, by choice, not that high, but maybe like it's still a percentage. It's still like I don't know. I To be honest, I've seen that kind of posting a lot, but again, you're
For
right.
sure, but
It's
I think
not
that's
that
the cognitive
often.
distortion where you see something a few times and then you make that phenomenon, okay, this must be a huge problem. I just wondered like what percentage of it. I think a lot of it is cope. I've definitely seen those posts too. I can't think that that's a prevalent mindset that like, I can do it all, I'm going to do it all. It's it's definitely a thing, but I don't know how big it is like you're
So
saying. Like I don't know that it's sweeping the nation.
among like all of the single mothers per se, let's say I don't know 5% or 10%, but I still think that 5 or 10 is two big numbers, and it's still new, so
I don't
it
know,
can
man.
only get
When I was a
worse.
kid, there was like 16 and pregnant. Supposedly that was sweeping the nation. Like all these single mother teens, or they can do it all. They can take it. Like, I can't think that's a huge trend that just like swept the nation. But I remember cries of, "This is a new trend. It is sweeping the nation." It doesn't seem to have really taken hold. And then there was beyond that. I swear there was another craze that I'm blanking on in between that and this. But I don't know, man. It's definitely a phenomenon. I don't know that it's like a huge trend or something that's really taking hold of the zeitgeist that, you must have a child young and then you can do it all. I don't know. I think people find themselves in that situation. I don't think it's necessarily like a goal or a dream.
But again, I said it like among all of the single mothers, that's maybe a 5% or 10%. So the number is still small, but it's still there. and it's so really bad. But you make really fair points that I like a lot. So maybe I'm too worried about that kind of future where we all get replaced by single mothers. I don't know. So Gray, what's your answers? Is there a decay in parenting?
I don't think so. I guess I'm gonna come off super white pilled on this, but when I think back to, like when America was started, like the colonial times, like this was the Wild West. Well, I guess I was in the wild flyover West. But like it was the brave frontier. And like what did parents do? They just bred like crazy. They had like 10 kids and they expected, a good handful of them are not going to survive the winter. Sometimes they wouldn't even name them till they're up to like 7 because they're gonna die. Like, why get attached to this thing? When you talk about like parenting through the ages, I'm wondering like when the golden age is that this decay is from. Because we talked earlier about like latchkey kids. So I was basically raised by a TV. Like my parents both worked, they were divorced. I didn't have parents like in the house. Like they showed up like late, would kind of cook dinner if I didn't already make it. And then it was pretty much time for bed. Like there wasn't a lot of parenting going on. I got up to some wild and weird shit. And then it seems like as society, we corrected. And then it came more of this helicopter parenting. Like, oh my God, every child is getting abducted. You can't leave them alone for 5 seconds. Now you need to know where they are at all times. And, they can't deal with any of these issues on their own. You have to go in and complain about everything. And it seems like, now people are making fun of that. And that's not necessarily the trend. So it seems like maybe it's kind of righting itself. But I think going from, having kids that are just disposable to, children should be seen but not heard to latchkey kids. I don't know. It feels like it's kind of moving back and forth. Like these parenting trends people are trying to do what's best or what they think is best for the next generation. I don't think anyone's setting this up to, you know, fail. Like they don't want their kids to be failures or not be able to deal with anything. They think that they're helping them out by taking care of the issue for them. Now we realize that, there are trade-offs to every action that we have. I think we're always trying to improve it. I don't think it's as bad as it could be. You're right. Like we're not necessarily, the replacement rate isn't huge. People are talking about, perhaps one of the reasons why we're letting in so much immigration is because we don't have that replacement rate up. And
Yeah.
a lot of our, benefits or whatever do kind of rely on the next generation to be working and to have more people in it than this previous one. That might be a problem, but it might be kind of like Tiamat was talking about with the idiocracy. Perhaps people are taking more planning for it. Like I can't afford a house right now, so I want to be in a stable position. I don't want to give this kid like a traumatic, really horrible, cramped living. Perhaps we wait a few years until we're in better footing, and then you end up having less kids overall. I don't know if that's necessarily worse. I'm really hopeful for the future. I see a lot of information coming out. There's this movement. It's not called natural parenting. But it's kind of a pushback to the helicopter parenting. I think her name was Lenore Skenazy, but she is the mother who let her, I think it was like 7-year-old, ride the subway trains in New York. She came up with this style of parenting that's a little bit more hands-off. Like you still kind of know where they're at, but you teach them things like, okay, here's how you get around in the city. Here's how you use public transportation. And then you give them things like, a cell phone. So if they do have an emergency, they could contact you. Or they've got like those air thing, whatever. You can see where they're at.
Yeah.
If you really need to. Air tags. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But yeah, there's like things that you can implement where you can still kind of give that kid a little bit more safety than just the latchkey kid where, they could do whatever, who knew where you're at, just be back by the time it's dark. To, you have a little bit more idea what they're doing. You can kind of keep an eye on what they're looking at online. But you don't have to be overbearing. It seems like that's kind of what, the more information we're getting on this, that's kind of what it's telling people to do, that there is kind of a happy middle ground. It feels like we are adjusting. Maybe I'm too hopeful, but I don't know. I think things are obviously changing, but I don't know. There's like some golden age where everything was like perfect that it's decaying from. I think it's just changing over time. And I think, parents are humans. They're trying to do the best they can. It's not like anybody is given like the correct book to go into this. Like, here is the perfect way to parent. Everyone's trying to figure it out as it happens, and it's tough.
Yeah, I think you make really good, fair point, and I was thinking of my answer to what would be the golden age. I'd say between 1975 and 1995. But again, more modern approach still works sometimes. Um, it's not because you're born after 95 that your parents suck. That's not what I'm saying there. But I think it has gotten worse in like the last 10 year ish when they really started that movement, or where, oh yeah, I need no man, and that kind of stuff. But the other factor is again the divorce rate, which increased. That's also why I mentioned like from 1975 to 1995. But again, in that time gap, there's still parents out there that can miss the mark, and after that timestamp, there's still parent that can hit the mark. It's not because you're outside or inside that it means something, if you know what I mean, Dre.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know. I'd want some data to kind of back that up. But the person that I was talking about, their style of parenting is called free range parenting, Lenore Skenazy.
This
She's
is
awesome.
good thinking, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the in between of both of those extremes.
Yeah, that's exactly, that goes back to what I mentioned, the neutral one. And this is how I was raised sometimes. I say sometimes because there are other times my parents were authoritarian, and other times they were like let him do stuff, like, or no frame at all. Like my parents were all over the place, and I was raised by many different people. So it was really messy. But yeah, like me too. I was maybe 8 years old when I started taking the metro loan. My mother was like, "Oh, that's the line, and that's your stop." And I started experimenting on my own, and I know the metro lines since I'm 8 years old, so I can navigate, I can help out, and I know the city very well because of these metro line and stuff. So that was how I basically started using the metro. So I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more to this.
Not for me.
Okay, it's video time. I found the video I was talking about last week, and this is actually what we will be reacting to. I
Oh
hope
yeah,
it's still
Mudahar is awesome.
yeah. Uh, I'm wondering if any of you have seen it, the video or his channel at all.
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely seen his channel, and I'm familiar with that dude.
There is no
Tiamat knows
such
him too.
thing as Mudahar or the Canadian Indian who doesn't. He's a good. No, he's a staple. He's just. Yeah. I
Okay.
think.
So my potato computer is potato. So I shared the video, yeah, in co-host chat. If someone can screen share the video. That was a fascinating discussion we had tonight.
You shouldn't apply. There's things of different types of stuff, right? I will say. Because not every generation makes the same mistake that the parents made. Like, I would know if I had kids, I would not make the same mistake.
Yeah,
Wait, does that make sense?
it does.
Like,
Was working on screen sharing. I'm wondering, Gray or D Lord?
where did you put it? You want me to, like, download it?
Co-host. I will actually copy paste it. I hope it will work.
Yeah, I was just
Oh.
muted. I got it up. It's right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Guys and gals, me Mudahar, and YouTube kind of asked me to make this video. My partner manager
working?
came in and reminded me about a certain bill that's passing in.
Is it not doing volume?
It wasn't. So place it back to 0.
Sure.
I can hear it.
The other way. If you want to, yeah, go right ahead, man.
I can hear it. You want me to like download it, and I can just download it.
Oh no, I thought you were saying that you were going to share it. I tried to, but maybe I was doing the other way of sharing it. So let me one moment.
I heard sound.
Yeah, share Chrome. Share tab is the one that
the other way is you download it and then you.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, I'm not downloading it. So we're good.
Canada. Hello,
Is
guys
that
and gals.
volume now?
Me Mudahar, and
Yeah. So place it back to 0 because we missed the first 3 seconds.
Okay, he said this is
hello,
Mudahar.
guys and gals. Me Mudahar, and YouTube kind of asked me to make this video. My partner manager came in and reminded me about a certain bill that's passing in Canada. Now you might be like, "Whoa, Mood, that's a combination of words that you're gonna have to walk me through," and I absolutely do. To remind a lot of people who are watching me, I'm from Canada. Okay, I'm from the land of maple syrup, the land of saying sorry every time you get into a traffic accident, regardless of who's wrong. I'm in the country that's known as the nicest country in the entire world. Actually, I don't know if it's entirely that. I think like
I'm pretty sure it's still inactive because that video was made a year ago. So I do think it's still around as of today. I don't think it has changed at all, and the effects are really shitty. So I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more before we play to go further.
No.
Okay, I guess we can play now.
Sweden or something beats us. But point is, Canada is a beautiful country, and I'm proud to be a Canadian. Okay, I'm a patriotic Canadian. You understand? But being patriotic means being brave enough to admit that your country's not all as great as it is. Okay. Now, to understand, when you watch YouTube, do you use the little recommended tab on the right? You probably get recommended a video that you're like, shit, I'll watch that. See, the way that YouTube works, like most social media services, is they scrape your user data, watch your look at your watch history, all that stuff, and basically using all of those data points, calculate what you are likely to click on. Okay. It's why channels like mine succeed in terms of videos. All right. Why a lot of channels succeed, because they get recommended to the people who are more likely to watch them. This is how YouTube maintains a lot.
This is why we have like the anti-woke crowd that are so like big, because it's an ecosystem. This is why we have other circle like the red pillars. It's another circle where people all repeat the same kind of stuff. So because of that, that's another ecosystem. We also have like the SGW corner, the leftist corner. That's obvious. So anyone wants to add more to this?
Not for me.
A lot of eyes remain onto it. Okay,
Pause
if you're
a second.
Yeah.
So the premise of this bill is it's a more intensive version of like it's kind of like a PBS that is Canada itself. Because I remember when C-19 was being in discussion, a little bit of the history on it is this was also inspired in the post-trucker debate, where the federal government could crack down. Basically, it is supposed to give them carte blanche to regulate all media, similar to what the UK has with their public broadcasting policies.
Exactly.
Now, the thing to it is, I will say this, in Canada, like I've had this discussion, it come from the artist community. When we deal with like Dev, he goes, but I am a social, he goes, he considers himself like a classical liberal in terms of politics. But a lot of stuff he says, it's like the idea there's parts of Canada that I have known right, which we would call right-leaning Canadians, but there is a huge bastion of left-leaning Canadians that did not realize there was a progressive heel turn. Now, in the wake of the trucker protests, a lot of us said that was Canada's last gasp of freedom. So this policy hasn't fully been enforced, but it gives them carte blanche, because you would know more up there, Multi, because the Supreme Court, I think, allowed the use of what we would call martial law here, but it's the federal government can just do whatever they want and take the money.
Yeah, so to give you an idea, like all of the bank accounts of these truckers, they were froze and they were deemed a terrorist organization, and some of them got arrested and sent to jail. Some of them had their trial last year, or by the end of 2022.
If they have their trials at all.
But yeah, that was a lost cause. The trial was just for the form and to pretend there's like justice.
Kangaroo court is the word you're thinking of.
Yeah, because like they got shot, bro.
You're thinking of the term is kangaroo court.
But yeah, I don't know the exact detail, but I can bet most of them are still in jail right now. And yeah, money was frozen. Like they were deemed these dangerous terrorists, Al Qaeda in Quebec. That face. Look at that face. Minna, sometimes his faces are telling.
Yeah, we did him dirty here.
Sorry, Minna.
Social media platform and you're not trying to keep people watching a video after another video, you are doing something wrong. If you haven't designed your system to constantly require you scrolling your feed, you've made a mistake somewhere in your design. Now, of course, YouTube promotes content of mine on an international market. To give you an idea of the people that are watching me, to give you some idea of like what my average viewer demographics are, I'm going to show you something in my analytics tab. According to my audience, according to the audience section, you can see that my top geographic locations are the United States at 48.6%, the United Kingdom at 6.2%, and Canada all at 6%. You might be like, whoa, that's not a lot of Canadians. May I remind you, Canada has less of a population than the entire state of fucking California, okay? So we're a small but proud country. Now, of course, Canada is governed with several sects of law, some pretty draconian. Now, to understand, being a Canadian content creator, a digital creator, like many other people in Canada that make content, like Linus Tech Tips, like various other creators that you may watch, all right, I'm kind of blanking out for a second.
There's a lot of Canadian
Those creators would now somehow be subject to a new law that's being introduced. Now, this is Bill C-11. Bill C-11 is also known as the Online Streaming Act. And while Canada would like to claim, hey guys, social media services may face obligations in relation to some of their commercial content if Bill C-11 passes, users of social media services would not be regulated. Did you know Bill C-11 supports all Canadian artists? Did you know Bill C-11 will only apply to commercial content? I wish we could have a little bit of a misinformation flag, because like vague, shitty laws, the reason why they're shitty is that they are so vague. So I wanted to...
Yeah. Okay, so what he didn't really say is, because maybe that was still new, so he didn't see it at that time, because he did that video a year ago, but I mentioned it last week. I will just repeat it again. One of the side effects of that law is now some of the content I shared on Facebook is no longer available where I am right now because I'm in Canada. Hell yeah, that's fun. Getting some China vibes. Thank you, Trudeau. That proved that you're a future dictator. Anyone wants to add more before we play?
You have to understand, there's a lot of Canadian creators, because this has been interesting, because this is a policy which is really some countries have really interesting draconian rules, so to speak, on these. Like, you see the effects in the UK on media, but in Canada, right, with I think the way it's running, a small section of the country is actually able to run it. So it's pretty much when you think of it, Ontario or something, and pretty much decide. Because they did not realize how far the stuff has fallen. Because media freedom is rather interesting. There's also a lot of Canadian creators. Now, you don't know this, and I don't know if you know this. Multi, have you ever heard of Mark Stein?
I've heard of him.
Mark Stein, who, because he does not have the politics, they try to strip his broadcasting license.
Oh yeah, I remember. I heard of that. Yeah, that happens a lot now. Like media are scared to broadcast stuff. To be honest, like a lot of the broadcast is like heavily controlled. Do you want to add more?
No, you're
Okay, let's keep going.
To go over a few things that honestly kind of freaked me out in this situation. Now, for one of the actual pieces from Bill C-11 that you can look up right now, all right, as of today, have each Canadian broadcasting undertaking shall employ and make maximum use and in no case less than predominant use of Canadian creative and other human resources in the creation, production, and presentation of programming unless the nature of the service provided by the undertaking, such as specialized content or format or use of the language other than French and English, renders that use impractical, in which case the undertaking shall make the greatest practical use of those resources. So again, to understand what's going on over here, is in Canada, we have something known as CanCon, okay, which is Canadian content. All right. Now, for those of you who don't know what Canadian content is, it's very simple. Okay. Basically, there's a requirement by the Canadian Radio, Television, and Communications Commission to keep content Canadian. Think of it like a fucking protectionist policy, okay, for Canadian, content producers. So again, here's their criteria, if you will. The producer must be Canadian and is responsible for monitoring and making decisions pertaining to the program. The production earns a minimum 6 out of 10 points based on key creative functions that are performed by Canadians. At least either director or screenwriter positions, and at least one of the 2 lead performers must be Canadian. A minimum of 75% of program expenses or post-production expenses are paid to Canadians or Canadian companies. Yes, they're very much trying to keep the work in Canada, if you will, or trying to promote a lot of those Canadians up forward. I'm also one of those people where in the world of the international global village, like I showed you earlier, it's not about being a Canadian anymore. It's about being a person that's putting themselves out in front of the world. As a digital creator, trying to meet some of these broadcasting requirements, CanCon requirements, are incredibly difficult, if not nearly impossible. Remember, these CanCon requirements are only going to benefit or protect the already established legacy media companies that already know how to abide by these laws. If this would ever regulate a YouTube or TikToker, for instance, right, which according to this bill is trying not to, a lot of those people cannot match that CanCon requirement, which means immediately, based on like how Canadian content is pushed, or what this bill wants to do.
That's hilarious. For the last like 30 seconds, I said pause, but I was on mute, so I'm feeling like gray right now. But basically, what he's saying is only like the top dogs are like getting benefits from that, and that's sad.
How only the top dogs? Because they know this criteria?
Well, actually, it's because they're more like police forefront, because they are the only one that really have a chance on going further. If you know what I mean, like if you're small, you remain small. You don't. Okay. If basically you're small, you cannot expect to expand more because you're like limited to Canada, because like other places they won't really like Canadian content because like Canadian want, like, it's really hard to explain, but basically Canada made that barrier telling we want more Canadian stuff, therefore um, only Canadian stuff can pass through, even if it's not really the case. But because they segregate other content from outsiders, they are like less inclined to promote these videos to Canada, if you know what I mean, because they're like they're on that pocket, they're on that bubble, and we don't want to participate to that bubble because they don't want us to be part of that bubble. Am I more clear on that?
I
Yeah, I
mean,
think I get it.
there's this
Yep.
thing too in Canada. A lot of like, you don't realize, as I said, how many creators are up there. It used to be a broadcasting free haven. The meme is almost all streamers are from Canada. Unironically, Alinity, a lot of top Twitchers are from up there. Doesn't say much. You guys could take Justin Bieber back, you know. But
Keep him, guys. He's doing bad music.
Shroud, I think moved to Canada, or was Canadian. But it's a backdoor method into controlling your media. You may not think about it, but like only if they can get the SERPs, you know. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I gotta disagree though. So like they have had this thing, this CanCon thing, Canadian content. Even when I went to school up there, like the radio had to be, was it 20% Canadian? It used to be a much less significant percentage, but they knew that like it was a way to somehow compete with the American music market, the American movie market, the American television market. You know, like if you could just broadcast like whatever the biggest show is, you know, Big Bang Theory or whatever the hell like the biggest sitcom is versus like Corner Gas or, you know, one of those Canadian ones, is it necessarily going to compete? No, not necessarily. Like the production value, everything is like completely different in it. But if they keep a certain amount of like the radio broadcasting or you know the television broadcasting is this Canadian content where you get a certain percentage of it, I don't know, that doesn't seem like the worst idea to keep you competitive. But then on top of that, the Canadian government is kind of awesome and they actually fund the arts. If you can prove that your content is a certain percentage Canadian, like that breakdown of like, you know, like so many members of the band or whatever are Canadian, you can actually get grants from the government to perform your art, to practice your art, which is really cool and something that we don't do here. So it does seem like if the government is funding it, perhaps they do have more of a reason to kind of put it forward as, hey, play this shit that we're funding. Like, what the hell? I kind of get that argument a little bit more. This seems like they took it a little bit harder and further than anyone was anticipating or hoping. But I don't know. It's just not like this new thing that they like just did since the trucker protest. Like I know for at least like 20 years they've had like a sort of percentage of content that must be Canadian.
Yeah, and you talked about earning money for the art and stuff. It's really specific, and they don't go after people. People need to go seek for it, and they need to meet like lots of condition, and they don't do that to anybody. They like, to give you an idea, like when an artist asks for I lost my train of thought. Damn, that's bad. Uh, that's me and my insomnia effing me over really hard. Because I had insomnia last night. But basically, when you're an artist, they sometimes give you money for your art, but you need to like meet requirement basically, and that was always a thing, and it's still a thing today. But it's really hard to get like that extra cash for your art and stuff. But at least we got it right. That's one good thing. But it's still very hard. It's not like uh, money like given left and right to any artist. You need to really meet requirements. Anyhow, I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more before we play.
No, I'm thinking we just play.
Yep.
They would immediately be thrown down in the feeds compared to legacy media companies that, hey, coincidentally, wink, wink, already have these elements in place. Now, of course, they very much specifically like to say the act does not apply in respect of a program that is uploaded to an online undertaking that provides a social media service by a user of the service for transmission over the internet to a reception of other users of the service. So basically, I guess what they're trying to say here is it's not going to affect people that are YouTubers who are trying to, upload videos and send those videos to other YouTubers. Just like if somebody uploads something to Facebook, it's not going to affect somebody that's receiving, a video on Facebook. So people who are partaking in the social media platform would not be affected. However, throughout this entire bill, I find it very difficult that they haven't actually specifically said anything regarding amateur or professional level productions. In fact, if you try to Google that, they don't really make that an actual, point. When we looked at this like a year ago, the big problem was they weren't really trying to isolate. Like the government, the ministers will tell you, hey, it's not going to affect the YouTuber or the cat video person. We need that in law. It can't be vague, all right? It can't be out there because, yes, while sure, the law seems to affect mostly Netflix, Amazon, and is trying to force larger, regulations onto them, who knows if at one point YouTubers or, at one point TikTokers may not be brought into the forefront. Even the chair confirmed that Bill C-11 would capture user content. It would take years to implement this even. So, for instance, one of them is Ian Scott appeared before the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage yesterday, and Bill C-11 proved to be a topic of discussion. The exchanges got testy at times. Oh boy, I love Canadian journalism. First, Scott was asked about the regulation of user content, confirming what has been obvious for months despite denials from Canadian Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez. The following exchange from Conservative MP Rachel Thomas got Scott on the record. Thomas, who basically straight up said, Bill C-11 does in fact leave it open to user-generated content being regulated by the CRTC. I recognize there have been arguments against this. However, Dr. Michael Geis has said the indisputable reality is that the net result of those provisions is that user-generated content is in the bill.
Pause.
Jeanette Patel from YouTube Canada said,
So what you're seeing described is what our FTC does in the US. They are an organization, or FCC, I should say. They can regulate all broadcasts that come out. They can regulate the internet. Now, how many of you guys are familiar with the idea of Section 230?
No clue.
Yeah, it was kind of big for a minute.
So Section 230 is a very, very bizarre guideline. It is the platform versus publishing. Do you guys know the difference?
I don't.
Neither do I.
Well, it's up for debate right now. Is kind of the thing. Like, so currently, like a lot of the.
Let me.
Okay, fair enough.
Start this point. So, the idea is certain platforms are free speech platforms, and they're meant to be like forums, which are public squares kind of thing. Like, you could argue that the idea is a publisher controls the content and can actually freely regulate the content. Now, this has been a provision since before the foundation of the internet in modern era. So look at YouTube. YouTube at one point has both said it's a platform as well as a publisher in a background. Now, there was a huge hearing where Democrats, before the election of Biden, they were going to look at Section 230. Everyone was looking at it because it would regulate forums like Facebook, X, or Twitter, those types as well. I don't know if Canada has that, and that's what it sounds like.
We do.
The FCC can regulate stuff. They are very famous for regulating like TV and radio, especially when they did the crackdown in the early 2000s. I'm sure, Gray, you're familiar with the story of Howard Stern and his war with the FCC?
Yeah, many of his. But even before that, there was Carlin. He basically gave them the words that can't be said.
But yeah, in the 90s and then the early 2000s, they re-cracked back down about 2006, about that period. So this is not unprecedented. But people forget the FCC regulations exist. In certain countries, they get broadcasting licenses, and that can be revoked at any time.
Yeah.
So
That's the same thing here. So, like as I said before, now like their content I could share and watch on Facebook, for example, prior that law, and now since that law and bill, I no longer access these videos because
before I forget though, also, with this type of regulation, you can also block what content your country sees.
yeah, exactly.
And this is not just able to Canada and other places. Every country can block certain YouTube videos, certain things.
Yeah, that goes back to the kind of filter. Oh, they don't want to promote our content. Why should we promote their content?
Or they
That's
find
like
it
a circle.
disinformation.
Yeah,
China's very famous for this. It happens in Europe.
yeah,
So that's what a little background on that. Sorry if it sounds off. But yeah, in the US, we have the FCC. The FCC largely goes unnoticed, but it exists.
yeah. I guess you get play except if someone
Said
would
the
like
draft's law wording gives the broadcast regulator, in other words, scope to oversee everyday videos posted for other users to watch. Now, of course, that was a conservative member saying it. At this point, Scott, the CRTC chair, says, as constructed, there is a provision that would allow us to do it as required. So remember, even if the government tells you that they can't fucking oversee, they don't care about overseeing you, they still somehow have the regulatory power to do that over you. It's fucked up, and the Canadian government is a really, really, really silver-tongued beast when it comes to this kind of shit, like any government. Now, to understand all of those platitudes and everything mentioned in the bill that sounded really nice completely encapsulates the fact that none of this is ever going to benefit the actual creators that you like to follow. Your favorite Canadian creators would not really benefit from this shit, okay? So to understand, let's get into how this will work, okay? Now, when it comes to YouTube specifically, as of right now, when it comes to the algorithm, I get watched by the international community. Canadian, not Canadian, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets my videos recommended as solid as possible. Now, of course, if this is properly implemented, YouTube obviously is coinciding that when it comes to things like, professional music videos that are uploaded on their platform or any professional piece, obviously they actually cave in to the Canadian government on that. You can read it right from YouTube right here. As we said before, we aren't opposed to regulation, and we will continue to do our part to support the Canadian creator economy. And we agree that an official music video should be regulated the same way, whether it's shown on YouTube or TV. But of course, that is not something that's specifically mentioned in this bill as far as I've read it. YouTube is simply telling the Canadian government, just please at least mention specific language to exclude user-generated content. The videos that you, me, and your favorite YouTubers, and not just your favorite YouTubers, your favorite Twitch streamers, your favorite TikTokers,
So the one thing about that is, like, what is the difference between like a professional band, as in like a band that makes money from performing, but they make a professional video? I don't know. Like, it would need to be defined a little bit more, because I'm not sure where Mudahar is making the distinction between, like your local everyday YouTuber and like a band. Like, I don't know. I've seen a whole bunch of, pretty horrible content that is official music videos for bands. Like, I don't know. It does seem like there should be some distinction somewhere, but it feels like Munahar is putting somehow bands on a different level, where a lot of it now, like with Spotify, you don't need a label. So a lot of it is just user generated stuff, content, albums.
The bands are considered like a different thing, I believe, just because they do music. But that's the best explanation I could provide. It's music, so it's different because music is under like bunch of different laws.
Fair enough. I just know a lot of funding does go to certain artists from Canada, and it
Yeah,
seems like they might have some say in trying to get them more airplay within their domain. But
It would make
I don't know.
sense, though. That actually makes sense because China does something very similar. They will promote state sponsored or Chinese functioned Chinese front people, if that makes sense.
yeah, and I will also say that.
But there's a caveat to this. Since they control that industry, like they hated the influence of K-pop bands, thinking of because they know how to control the media. I'm not saying Canada would do this.
They do.
Now the idea is they also control that content that gets out. So you can be created by it or you can be destroyed by it. But if you become big enough, daddy government or mama government comes down and squishes you.
Yeah.
Basically, in the case of like Russia, like music you can see, right? Let's say someone becomes big. There's stories in China about models and people who go missing or get convicted of crimes and thrown underneath the prison. Now, this is both good and bad. Now, this could apply to how Canada does this, but they could also be viewing the space as because there is no labels, maybe they could view like independent creators or set arts as that. But what if this does open them up to further scrutiny if they become political kind of thing?
Yeah, and we already had that in the past, but it wasn't that bad because we didn't have that bill there. But since the bill, I will also testify to something else. There's much more commercial that are made by the government of Canada and government of Quebec. And now it's much more often like when I'm on YouTube or Facebook, I see a lot more like commercial from here about like substance. I won't call it because YouTube hates that word, or alcohol and driving. I see much more of that kind of like awareness commercial than like car commercial or that kind of stuff. Since that bill, the commercial are more aimed a specific way to like create propaganda, not necessarily propaganda, but like targeted ads. Exactly, that's what I was searching for. There's a lot more targeted ads since that bill, and this sucks. I'm wondering if any of you would like to add more to this.
Not for me.
I guess not, so we can play.
Your favorite Facebook gamers, your favorite Twitter gamers, whatever the fuck exists on that platform, all those people need to be excluded. Because as of right now, the Canadian government has some level of regulatory oversight on a place they really goddamn shouldn't. Now, why it's really bad is, again, if this is to pass, and of course Canada wants to promote Canadian content over everyone else, within the Canadian YouTube space, what could effectively happen is, let's say that somebody's watching videos on YouTube. A Canadian person is just watching YouTube videos. Now, of course, in terms of tech content, they may be given a video from Marquise Brownlee or a video from Linus Tech Tips. Under this, because of how it sounds, it seems like Linus Tech Tips would be given the A-OK on promoting his content over Marquise Brownlee, simply because Linus is a Canadian promoting to Canadian. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't take into factor the quality of the video, how applicable that video is to the actual user it's being recommended to. So let's say Linus gets recommended to some Canadians simply because they're Canadian, but they have no interest in watching the video from Linus. Well, all of a sudden, Linus's click-through rate would astronomically go down, which would impact his promotion of content in the entire global world. Theoretically, all right, and of course, in a practical sense, I would be willing to put my left nut on status and say for most Canadians, this would be a detrimental impact to our growth on this platform in compared to our peers. Honestly, it might, if there was even an option to opt out from
Pause.
That goes back to what I said. Like, they basically shot in the foot Canadian content by doing what they did. Is it better since he explained it very well? I fully understand, but is it like more fluid and understandable the way he framed it?
Yeah, I really like that explanation. It does seem like it is kind of a trade-off, like whether you want to put Canadian content front and center, which could screw the click-through rate, but it could also give you more eyes, which supposedly that's what we're trying to do, getting the algorithm to get more eyes on our content. I don't know. It seems like it is definitely a trade-off. I don't know if that would screw over most of them or get a little bit more clicks. I'm not sure.
So yeah, D-Lord, what do you wanted to add?
No, you're good. I already said.
One last thing, like, I can tell, like, YouTube is not happy with that kind of bill because only parts of the internet is really forefront and important. So yeah.
No, you can regulate. What's funny is countries can carte blanche regulate their sections of YouTube. There's a reason why a lot of the Great Firewall of China, they create their... You laugh at that.
It will turn like that here. That's why I laugh.
The Great Firewall of China basically is a way of controlling information. Why do you think they have Chinese versions of things? Because they... Just give you one idea. Maybe this is an effect of a generation. We talk about the effects of controlling information and how they did it.
Yeah.
The outside world is familiar with Tiananmen Square. They used to hide the fact from their own people of Tiananmen Square. Slowly, the death in that knowledge in that event disappeared. So only people outside know about it. They redesigned everything. Now, years later, you can ask a normal person on the street, because of the effects the government between the propaganda and the Great Firewall effect, they don't know about Tiananmen Square. Period.
Yeah.
You have a generation and a half that doesn't know about it even.
And that's funny because of that kind of flaw. Well, information and misinformation can be spread easier. Like, propaganda is really easy to slide in because you control what's being shared around. So yeah, I guess we can play now.
Having Canadians view my content, I may actually consider it if it means not being impacted globally. And how fucked is it as a Canadian, I even have to consider banning other Canadians from watching the content that I make? Why would that even come to my mind? Again, it's the government having no fucking clue about what they're doing and instead having some form of regulatory oversight, because let's be honest about what this is, okay? Legacy media is dying, okay? This is simply a way for digital, companies that are coming in from outside Canada, like Netflix, like Amazon, that are promoting better content, creating better content, to basically have money being shifted to these legacy media companies and trying to keep them alive. This is simply protectionism to protect legacy media again in Canada, even if the content is bad, without factoring that we live in a global village. For people who are making content digitally, the fact that our audiences have always been from an international, spectrum, the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, basically any country, India out there, the fact that Canada wants to, implement some of its crappy policies in the entire internet as a whole leaves me a bit shocked, bewildered, and honestly, I don't like the state of Canadian internet freedom anymore, given the rate of how these bills are being adopted. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Canadian Bill C-11 sucks a lot of ass. And if you ask anybody that actually produces content in Canada, you'll realize that this doesn't ever benefit a lot of the racialized communities that Canada wants to promote. In fact, if anything, this will be a bill that outright promotes and preserves a lot of those old legacy media outlets out there and tries to keep them at the forefront, basically keeping a dying breed active. This is like an IV drip for dying media, all right, at least from what I'm reading, all right, at least from what I'm understanding. And when it comes to services like Netflix and services like Amazon, it might make them reconsider being in the Canadian market, okay, if they have to comply by some really insane arbitrary rules. And of course, having the provision to have literal content creators like you, me out there affected, especially in Canada, is very, very questionable, very, very against the idea of this. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to make this video because as a Canadian, these laws oftentimes confuse me. These laws oftentimes bewilder me on how they're ever even passed and accepted. And then I realized the game is actually rigged from the beginning. But it doesn't.
Thanks, Trudeau. I hate you, Trudeau. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank God. I want to interject. When I say earlier is, as a student of history, when I saw the thing with the truckers, like I remember, like Short Fat Otaku or Dev will not make the trucker video because he will have to acknowledge it. That was basically, in a way, the last gasp of freedom. Because from here on out, you guys have WEF officials. Even if they remove Trudeau, WEF type thinking has taken root. Now it is the job of the average Canadian to maybe vote them out. But like Dev is going to say, oh, I won't vote Trudeau and all this mess. Yes, you will. Because none of us believe you that you're not an authoritarian dickhead. And Canada hasn't fallen.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's where you are. I mean, Ontario is what mainly people see.
It's even worse where I am. Like Quebec, it's like we got a mini Trudeau in Quebec. But at least our mini Trudeau doesn't take example of China, so he's a bit less worrying. But yeah, like,
So,
it sucks.
Because what I say is, you got to understand, as history goes, right, you got to realize the events that lead to further cracking down on moments in history. And I'm not saying the truckers were entirely right either. It's kind of like not everybody on January 6th meant to do bad harm. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's true.
It was used as a moment and a cudgel. It was basically the people, because in our country, the founding fathers gave the right to bear arms because the ability to rebel against the government. Because the founding fathers gave that as the people could regulate the government if it became bad.
That's a funny argument because I keep thinking, like, when military comes into your house, even if you have a bunch of guns, they will take you down if they want to.
But you know what's funny, though, about that? If you ever ask, and I'm not saying it's been tested, And it'd be a very interesting day when it is tested. Even though the military swears an allegiance to the president, as commander in chief,
Yeah.
most military people would not turn their own guns on their own community. Bordered.
You could be surprised.
I'm not saying entirety. There would be a large bastion if it came down to declaring martial law and it's never been fully tested.
Yeah.
There is an entire generation they would rebel against the government.
That's true.
And this is still very true amongst people I know who are liberal members of the military.
But that's not my generation.
And it's more recent, because not all the Iraq people, the Iraq generation, are entirely subservient. But that's a big trick. I don't know if Canada has that, because people don't understand that's why the Bill of Rights exists. We have multiple checks and balances that keep our system together. And it's really weird, but that's part of the reason for planning.
Yeah.
Because the founding fathers knew that they were founded in a revolution, but they know they're not taking it out of the government. And by the way, there are citizens more armed, or just as armed as the military.
Interesting.
You're here.
Yeah.
Because there's a little bit, because just to give you an idea, there is a reason that the government of the United States, especially in the 90s, feared paramilitary groups. The Clintons, you've heard the story of Ruby Ridge and those stories, and around the time of Waco and what the ATF does. The ATF will try to every so often go crack down on these organizations, but a lot of them hide their weaponry and what they truly have. And you would be surprised how much military grade stuff gets around and out to the public.
I'm not surprised, because there's also
What
a
I
lot
heard
of
in that is
like
that Tiamat is packing.
You gotta understand, I am more familiar with a lot of areas like this video, and a lot of what the idea is. There's a way to fight regulation. Worst case, the federal government, your federal government, cracks down and does the worst case scenario, because it opens up for the entirety regulation of your branch of the internet. At worst,
True.
the FCC could do this in the United States, but it chooses not to.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, we have our own problem. Journalism is supposed to regulate journalism.
But here in Canada, the government controls journalism.
Ours feels a little controlled too. It's not exactly free.
It's controlled by interest groups, because what
Fair enough.
happens here, little known secret, like O'Reilly, has talked about this. Every so often he'll mention this. All the news broadcasters, have you ever wondered in the morning, when you look at broadcasts side by side, they all sound the same?
Agreed.
That in the US, there's media groups. They get one email in the morning. Mrs. Whether you're on CNN or Fox News, with talking points of the day. or
Yeah.
major stories. So you'll find a lot of these stations, these personalities, lead the same way. Now, currently on Fox News, this is a little bit of a rarity, even. But there are certain people who did do this. Like Juan Williams is a very famous one. But they get an email or whatever is the current. Now, does it set the tone for the day? You get my point, right?
I do.
And that's why if you ever look, scaringly, some news broadcasts sound the same. I
Yeah,
don't know.
most of them do.
It's literally a morning email.
Yeah, I guess we can play the rest.
Yes, I should.
Have to be. All right. If you're a Canadian out there and you don't like Bill C-11, let your MP know. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a fucking democracy. These fucking heathens work for us. Okay. You let them know. You let them know that you're not voting for them anymore. And all of a sudden, they'll fucking get down on their knees and suck you off if they have to. That's how government works. That's how mafia works. That's how democracy works. Stand up, fight for your freedoms. Okay. And make sure your internet is as deregulated as possible, because let me tell you, it's the last bastion for freedom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and I'm going to take those pills my doctor told me to. I am out.
So that was the video. What guys thought of it?
Yeah, I love his passion at the end. I can definitely understand where he's coming from. I think my only real criticism is just for some reason he was saying that YouTube or independent created content is user generated content is somehow different than like an official band's video. I don't know. It sucks that, you know, they actually put that in writing, but I think a lot of it could be the same. Like with a lot of this digital, I forgot what he called it, digital community, digital whatever that we have. You know, I don't know that you necessarily need labels or anything like that for distribution. A lot of people do rely on YouTube, and they do release their official videos on there. So
You're thinking of
I don't know, that would just
independent
suck.
creators, because in music you don't need a label. Like prime
Yeah, not anymore.
example, I think wasn't it? You can check me if I'm wrong. It was like Pearl Jam was very famous for not going without a label. Like people could try to self-publish
Yeah.
their own stuff, even back
I mean, a
then.
lot of people did. Like the whole punk scene was like DIY and stuff, but the problem is like getting it to the masses. Like you could have like mail order where they'd want to buy your record or CD or whatever, but yeah, actually getting it on the shelf where somebody can see it, that was like impossible. And there's only like X amount of shelf space, so you have to be on one of the labels who automatically gets X amount of that shelf space. So I don't know. It was a really hard market to get into before, where now, you know, when's the last time you went and bought an album like at a store? Like, you know, you kind of look it up online, and it's even the playing field. You
The
don't
funny
need to be
part
part of
is
it.
you can actually like Tom McDonald, who actually is a beloved Canadian in America, but he self-publishes and uploads to Apple. But Billboard has this weird old regulation because there is no label.
Yeah, you might not make it into that, and you might not make it into like the Academy Awards or whatever for YouTube video, but you might actually get eyes on it now, and that
Yeah,
really levels the playing
Spotify,
field.
that's why you see a lot of people go, you can upload, you just have additional fees or whatever. But that's the thing in the music, right?
Yeah, and that's my only complaint. Other than that, like I think he makes some really good points, and he brought some real passion to this. I think that dude's awesome, and I think this video is well thought out. And oh yeah,
And
I learned a lot more about it,
that's why I
even though
say
we talked about it last week.
C19 was Canada's attempt to get ahead of the issue that is going to plague America. We have a we actually have a problem of this is an American issue. Everybody else quickly realized it and has found a way to start to regulate it. Like China found a way to control the information flow. Canada is trying to get their own. We don't want to set a limit to the internet in America. Like we don't want to believe big tech is out to get everybody. Like, it's very funny when you look at Meta, like Zuckerberg and everybody else. They look like James Bond villains, or like if you've ever seen Tomorrow Never Dies. Carver Media, like the head guy who was going to start a war, he goes, it doesn't matter. I'm in more newspapers. My newspapers and my internet sites reach more people than the government does. I can control the government. Now, these people exist, but the problem itself is we have an industry in the U.S. which is largely unregulated, and that is the internet. And this is how you deal with it. In the U.S., we're leaving it as the Wild West. Other places are starting to regulate it. But it being the Wild West has resulted in some problems. We have that cyberpunk dystopian style future incoming with like Twitter and other stuff in the United States. Because it's very hard to, because I don't know if you saw the social media hearings in the US. And I recommend anyone who watches this go and look them up. Congress literally exposed the fact alone you could get a bad actor in there and manipulate data. But in other countries, we have measures. They have measures that are more strict to manage these people or promote their own agenda. In the US, we have regulations, but we choose not to. But our laws to govern the internet are over 20 years old.
Need some updating. I will be honest. They need
It's a lot like your immigration policy is only as good as the last time you updated it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like ours never got updated. It's still like the one from after World War II or something. I don't know.
It would shock people. In the U.S., we largely keep our immigration policy hasn't progressed much since Ellis Island era. As well as, like, a lot of times when you see, like, the Mexican or Latino migrants that come over, they can come over under Chain Migration Act. And that was put into place to get the Irish into America in the mid-1800s.
Yeah.
Post the Irish potato famine.
Anyhow, that was a very fun topic. I'm glad we had that discussion about parenting, and I'm glad we covered the Bill C-11.
C19.
What do you have going on your part of the internet, D-Lord?
I just randomly stream something. I'm testing it out more or less, but I'm also using it as an excuse to keep myself current. I do a little bit of gaming, and then it's a little bit talking over. But sometimes it's more focused because I am currently trying to do a playthrough or update Genshin, but I'm 2 years behind. I caught myself up. But then there's going to be some commentary. I do have maybe some topics I need to. It's been kind of a whirlwind lately because I have something I have to discuss with Gray. But my corner of the internet really picked up recently.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It's pretty interesting. It's very rare you get to document a civil war, so to speak.
Wow. I cannot wait to hear that backstage. What about you, DC?
Pretty much the same way I've been uploading just music for my show. I plan to upload one tomorrow. Trying to get as consistent as I possibly can. But yeah, so far, been doing good. Been doing good uploading again. It feels actually really nice to be uploading. But yeah.
This is good news. Like if it feels good, keep doing it. You will feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
That's like a substance rush, but in a good way. What about you, Gray? What do you have going on?
Yeah, the official thing I got going on every Thursday, the Thinkers on that darn kidda's channel. We think about certain topics, kind of like we did here, but there's a lot more people and a lot more contention. Good times. Come check it out. And DC has been just like prolifically like just putting out a ton of songs on his channel. Definitely check those out. They're really fun. They really get you hyped, man.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I try to make that as crazy and disturbing as I possibly can. Gray, I'm not sure which one you saw. I've recently uploaded a Dark Claws, but which one did you listen to, Gray?
I didn't see the one today, but I think for like the last 3 or 4 days, you've had at least one that you uploaded. I checked out all those, and they get you hyped, man. It's like superhero music. It's great when you're working out. I gotta say, hell yeah, keep it up, man.
Oh wow, yeah. If you want to find the original, you can just search up. I posted in the description. It's usually Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but it's like some of the songs that they played. But yeah, I try to mix it as much as I can. But yeah.
This is good news, man. I'm telling you, that's amazing. Anyhow, on my end, I work on the Naruto power scaling tier list because I've seen a video. Like I haven't seen the full video, but like the parts I've seen, I was like, that's outrage. I need to do my own because these people, man.
Oh. No, you are. Oh no. I know
Naruto's
about
awesome,
that.
man. I would like to know the power scaling. I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
That's just so that is. You know what's funny? That is subjective. That's also a section of YouTube that I truly don't care for because it is so awful. Because I have a policy. I like staying away from shippers, and I like staying away from. I hate shipping fan fiction and what it does to anime, and also tier lists because, to be fair, anime is a taste of sometimes even people who know anime. A lot of areas get tourists in there. They don't know they don't know what they're doing. Like you can have like one branch of anime and go into another and you go, oh, you're a tourist. What are you doing here? Then because I did a thing recently on normies. The topic is one. It really just irritated me because there was a guy. Normies, tourists. Yeah, normies and tourists. See, you have your normie animes that are go-tos. That are the Western ones. This is the ones they know. The fan service people are like the others. They're weird. Like the tourists just come in, try to co-op it. You got these weird that are in between. This is why like the anime people bother me sometimes. Another hobby interest. This is what you're getting into. They're like, they know it, but they don't know it. Then they put their own spin on it. It's like, because you can know certain shonens, but you don't know your way around sports animes.
Yeah. But some people pretend they know everything. That's
you
life.
only know as much as your other. It's like, no, I just want to make a point. It's like, it's very funny. Do you ever want to see something funny? Let people discover Fist of North Star or Berserk.
Berserk is cool.
Chainsaw Man is rather divisive as well.
Yeah.
But yes, you got your...
Anyhow, this shall be the end. That was very fun. And I wish everyone that sticked around that long a great date and thank you a lot.
Mhm.